Sit down and wait. People like you are not a priority here. Sheriff Reeves lowered the cigar from his mouth and looked at Maya with half an eye. Maya stood at the edge of his office doorway. I want to report a stolen passport, she said, keeping her voice steady. Sheriff Clayton Reeves leaned back in his chair. In Pine Hollow County, I am the law, Reeves said. His mouth curled into a proud, ugly smile as his eyes moved over Maya's plain brown jacket, dark jeans, and modest purse. And my law doesn't have room for petty little paperwork problems from bored girls with nothing better to do. You want priority? Walk out that door. Find yourself a VIP card or a name that actually means something, then come back and talk to me. Maya looked at him for a long second. All right, Maya said. I'll wait. Reeves gave a short laugh and lifted the cigar again. Smartest thing you've said all morning. Maya turned and walked back out into the lobby. Behind her, the office door clicked shut, and through the glass she could hear one of the deputies chuckle under his breath. Linda Crow stepped toward her with a clipboard already in hand. Ma'am, if your passport got stolen, fill out the form and sit down. The sheriff doesn't stop county business for people like you. She slid a clipboard across the counter without looking at Maya again. Name, address, date of birth, and a short description of the incident. Keep it brief. We've got a busy day. Maya only lowered her chin and smoothed the front of her brown jacket, letting her fingers brush the small dark button sewn near her collar. Everything had been recorded. Maya took the pen. A stolen passport can involve identity fraud, federal documentation, sometimes trafficking or financial crimes. Linda finally looked up, but not with concern, with annoyance. Honey, this is Pine Hollow County, not Washington, D.C. A deputy behind the counter chuckled without turning around. Maya wrote slowly and clearly, enough to prove that the form deserved intake. When she handed it back, Linda glanced at the top page, then placed it beside her keyboard instead of entering it into the system. Have a seat, Linda said. She crossed one ankle over the other and placed her purse in her lap. At 8:57, an elderly black man approached the counter with a manila folder pressed to his chest. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice still carried the careful. Miss Linda, he said, I came last Tuesday about my son's arrest record. You told me to come back today. Linda did not smile. Name, Samuel Reed. My son is Terrence Reed. He was picked up on a warrant that belonged to another Terrence Reed out of Macon. Different birthday, different middle name. I brought the paperwork. Linda clicked her mouse twice. Nothing new in the system. Mr. Reed opened the folder. But ma'am, he lost his job over this. They said, if the sheriff's office sends a correction, if there was something to process, it would be processed. Linda said. The old man stood there for another moment. He nodded, whispered, thank you, though nobody had helped him, and returned to his seat. Maya's jaw tightened, only slightly. The camera kept recording. At 9:18, a woman in a floral blouse came in with 2 children and a stack of papers folded into a grocery bag. She said she had filed a complaint 3 times about a deputy. Linda told her complaints had to be submitted during business hours. It is business hours, the woman said. Linda tapped the counter. Then you'll need the correct form. You gave me that form last time. Then you filled out the wrong section. The woman looked around the lobby, embarrassed by her own desperation. Her little girl leaned against her leg and asked if they could go home. At 9:43, a white man in a gray suit walked in carrying no paperwork at all. Linda straightened before he reached the counter. Mr. Callahan, she said, suddenly warm. Sheriff's expecting you. A deputy stepped out and shook the man's hand. Come on back, sir. He's finishing a call, but he said to send you right in. Behind the counter, 2 deputies joked over styrofoam cups of coffee. Another complaint day, the older one muttered. Officer Daniel Price gave a weak smile. Seems like every day is complaint day lately. Folks wouldn't have so much to complain about if they learned how to act when they see blue lights. Maya did not turn her head. The button caught the voices. A few minutes later, the older deputy lowered his tone, but not enough. If it's about the Harlan boy, don't write it down. Sheriff said nothing connected to that file hits intake without his say-so. Price's smile disappeared. Still, especially now. From inside the sheriff's office, Maya heard Reeves's voice carry through the partly closed door, low and irritated. "Don't mention the Harlan boy out there," he said. "I told you that file was closed." Harlan. She had heard that name before in closed-door meetings, in preliminary reports stamped with cautious language, in the kind of quiet briefings where nobody said corruption until the paper trail was strong enough to survive a courtroom. Another man's voice answered, lower than Reeves's. "But the Carter family keeps asking about the body cam footage." "Then let them keep asking," Reeves snapped. "There is no footage. What about Evan Harlan's blood alcohol results?" Then Reeves spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "You ought to learn how to forget things that don't exist in the official file anymore. Evan Harlan, son of Senator Robert Harlan. A late-night crash. A black veteran named Leon Carter blamed in a report that did not match the physical evidence. Missing body cam footage. A vanished test result. And now, right in front of her, another story was beginning to open itself. At the reception counter, Linda pulled open a drawer. A red-faced man in work boots stepped up and turned his back to the lobby. "Miss Linda," he said quietly, "I need this paper handled today." Linda did not look up. "Everybody needs something handled today." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Sheriff said you'd understand." The man gently placed a white envelope beneath the stack of papers on the counter. Linda rested her hand on top of it as, "Naturally. You sit over there," she said. "Don't say anything else." The man nodded and stepped back. Mr. Reed, who had been waiting nearly an hour with his worn hat in his hands, immediately stood. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice tired but still polite. "I came before him. I just need someone to sign off on my report." Linda did not bother to look at him. "Mr. Reed, I told you already. Your file isn't up yet, but you just took his paper." The man in work boots turned his face away. Linda shut the drawer with a cold little click. "Do you want to file a report, or do you want to cause trouble in the sheriff's office?" Mr. Reed went silent. Across the row of chairs, the woman holding two small children stood up. The baby in her arms was crying hoarsely from exhaustion. "I can't wait anymore," she told Linda. "I've been here since morning. My children haven't eaten." Linda shrugged. "That's your choice." A moment later, the woman carried them out of the lobby. Maya stayed still. 10 minutes later, Linda returned from the stamping machine with the work-booted man's paperwork. The red seal was still fresh. A signature sat neatly at the bottom of the page. "Done," Linda said under her breath. The man took the papers and walked straight out through the side door. Maya watched him leave, then looked back at Linda. "His file seemed to move quickly," Maya said. Linda lifted her eyes, irritation sharpening her face. "You're still here?" Maya gave her a small smile. "Yes," she said. "I'm still waiting to file my report." She asked, "Your staff are just standing there doing nothing, so why isn't anyone helping me?" Linda leaned toward and murmured, "Sheriff, that woman there says her passport was stolen. Says it's important." Reeves turned his head. His eyes landed on Maya. For 1 second, he saw her. "Everybody thinks their problem is important," he said. The deputies smiled. Maya held his gaze. She gave him nothing. Sheriff Reeves looked away first. "If she's still there after lunch," he said, loud enough for her and everyone else to hear, "maybe she'll learn patience." Laughter followed him through the door. "What do you need done here?" Samuel Reed asked. Maya turned slightly toward him. "I'm just here to report a stolen passport, sir," Maya said. Samuel gave a dry, tired little laugh. "Seems like folks have to wait a mighty long time in here before anything gets handled." Maya looked toward the counter, where Linda Crow was laughing softly with one of the deputies. "It does seem that way." Samuel lowered his voice. "Or you gotta leave a little something behind, and then it gets handled right away." Maya glanced at him. "Your son?" she asked softly. Mr. Reed looked over, surprised anyone had spoken to him. "Yes, ma'am. Terrence. Works over at the feed store when they let him. Worked, I suppose." He swallowed. "They picked him up on a warrant meant for another man. Same first and last name. That's all. My boy kept telling them, 'That's not me.' They held him anyway." "How long?" 31 hours. He tried to smile, but it never became one. Long enough for his boss to say he couldn't have that kind of trouble around customers. Maya nodded once. And you've been here before. 4 times. He tapped the folder. Gently. I got his birth certificate, his social security card, letters from his employer, even a copy of the warrant showing the other man's middle name. Miss Linda keeps saying the file isn't ready. Mr. Reed followed Maya's gaze and lowered his voice. You learn after a while not to expect too much from folks who can make you wait just because they can. Maya looked at the sign on the wall again. To serve and protect. The words were clean. The room beneath them was not. The secured door opened with a low buzz, and Sheriff Clayton Reeves stepped halfway into the hallway. Then he saw Maya and Samuel Reed, still sitting beside her. Well, I'll be, Reeves said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Looks like we've got ourselves a little waiting room club. Samuel Reed straightened, but he did not speak. Reeves took a slow pull from the cigar and let the smoke drift upward. Mr. Reed, you still here? I thought Linda explained that paperwork doesn't move faster just because you sit there staring at it. Samuel's voice was careful. Sheriff, I only need someone to confirm the mistake in my son's file. Reeves smiled as if Samuel had told a joke. Mistakes, complaints, missing passports. Everybody walks in here with a crisis. He turned his gaze to Maya. Some folks don't understand that county business ain't a drive-through window. Maya did not answer. She sat with both hands resting on her purse, shoulders relaxed, face calm. That calm seemed to irritate him more than anger would have. Reeves looked toward the counter. Linda, why is the lobby still cool enough for people to get comfortable? Linda blinked. Sheriff? You heard me. Reeves flicked ash into a small tray. One of the deputies hurried to hold out for him. If folks plan to camp out all day, they don't need hotel conditions. The older deputy chuckled again and walked toward a thermostat mounted near the hallway. He turned it down, then paused when Reeves cleared his throat. Other way, Reeves said. The deputy grinned and adjusted the controls until the air conditioner clicked off. Reeves watched Maya, as if waiting for her to complain. She did not. He looked at Samuel Reed. Maybe by this afternoon, both of you will decide your time is better spent somewhere else. Samuel looked down at his folder. Maya lifted her eyes to Reeves. Is that how this office handles citizens who wait too long, Sheriff? Reeves's smile hardened. This office handles citizens, according to priority. And who decides priority? He gave her the full weight of his grin. I do. Maya gave a small nod. Reeves turned away first. Let them sweat, he said, to no one in particular, and disappeared back through the secured door. The older deputy was still laughing when the door closed. Officer Price stood and walked toward the coffee pot. When he passed near Maya's row, he slowed just slightly. You doing okay, ma'am? He asked, not loudly. Linda looked up. Maya understood the risk he had taken simply by sounding human. I'm fine, she said. Price nodded, then continued to the coffee pot as if nothing had happened. The older deputy noticed anyway. Careful, Price. You start checking on every sad story in here, you'll never get real police work done. Price poured his coffee. Just being polite. Polite gets mistaken for permission. Near noon, 2 county workers came through the front door with lunch bags from a diner down the street. Maya's phone stayed silent in her purse. She did not check it. Agent Marcus Reed knew she had entered the building. He knew the button was live. At 12:22, Sheriff Reeves's office door opened again. His voice came first, rich with amusement, followed by the smell of cigar smoke. Tell Robert, I said. He doesn't need to worry, Reeves said. The county's got a short memory when you give it something else to talk about. The man in the sports coat laughed. He'll appreciate that. Reeves clapped him on the shoulder and walked him toward the side exit, the one that bypassed the lobby. As they crossed, Reeves's gaze drifted again toward Maya. Still waiting? He asked. Maya looked up. Yes. Reeves shook his head, amused. That's the trouble with people nowadays. Always convinced waiting is some kind of injustice. Maya's voice remained soft. Sometimes it is. He leaned slightly closer. In this building, justice moves. When I say it moves. Maya held his eyes. Behind the button, the tiny lens kept taking in the room. Reeves straightened and turned away. Let her sit, he told Linda. Maybe by closing time she'll figure out this ain't Atlanta. The side door opened. The man in the sports coat left. Reeves vanished back into the secured hallway, carrying his confidence with him like a weapon he had never seen misfire. Maya remained in the chair. Mr. Reed looked at her, then at the closed door. "You got somebody coming for you, ma'am?" "Yes," she said, "but not just for me." If Maya's patience and quiet courage touched your heart, please like this video. Comment where you are watching from, because someone near you might be listening to this story too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. Mr. Reed did not understand. Not fully. But something in her tone made him sit a little straighter. Maya William had not come to be helped. She had come to see how long the truth could sit in plain sight before a corrupt man recognized it. And Sheriff Reeves, proud as ever behind his locked door, still had no idea that the woman he had dismissed was giving him exactly what he had asked for. She was waiting. By 12:47, the heat in the lobby had stopped being uncomfortable and started becoming personal. It gathered under the low ceiling and settled on the backs of necks. It made people shift in their chairs, made paper stick to palms, made the old vending machine sound louder than it was. Maya stayed where she was, straight-backed on the hard plastic chair, both hands resting on her purse. Sheriff Reeves had meant the heat to be a message. Maya treated it like evidence. Samuel Reed took a folded handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed his forehead. He tried not to make it obvious. Men of his generation often carried suffering like loose change, quietly, carefully, never wanting it to spill out where others could see. "You all right, sir?" Maya asked. He nodded. "I've worked hayfields hotter than this. That doesn't make it right." "No, ma'am." He glanced toward the hallway where Reeves had disappeared. "But right and wrong don't seem to be the language they speak in here." Before Maya could answer, the front door opened, and a woman in her 60s stepped in, moving slowly but with purpose. She wore a navy church dress under a light cardigan, and her silver hair was pinned back neatly. In one hand, she carried a brown envelope. In the other, she held a small photograph pressed against her chest. The room noticed her in the way guilty rooms notice someone who has come back too many times. Linda saw her and immediately looked tired. "Mrs. Carter." Maya's body stayed still, but every sense sharpened. The woman approached the counter. "I'm here to ask again about my husband's case." Linda did not reach for a form. She did not turn to the computer. "There's no update." "You didn't ask his name." "I know who you are." Mrs. Carter's face tightened, but she kept her voice even. "Then you know Leon Carter did not cause that crash." One of the deputies behind the desk muttered, "Here we go." Mrs. Carter heard it. So did Maya. So did the button. Linda leaned closer, lowering her voice as if that made cruelty more professional. "Ma'am, you need to stop coming in here upsetting yourself." "I am not upset because I came here," Mrs. Carter said. "I am upset because my husband served this country, paid taxes in this county for 32 years, and now his name is sitting in your report like he was drunk and reckless when he was neither." Officer Price looked toward the hallway. The older deputy stared into his coffee like the bottom of the cup might give him permission not to care. Linda's eyes flicked toward the secured door where Reeves had gone. It was quick, but Maya caught it. "That matter is closed," Linda said. Mrs. Carter placed the photograph on the counter. It showed a black man in a veteran's cap standing beside a little boy with a fishing pole. The old man in the picture had one hand on the child's shoulder, and the quiet smile of someone who had survived hard things without letting them sour him. "This man is not a file you can close," Mrs. Carter said. For a second, nobody moved. Then Linda pushed the photograph back across the counter with 2 fingers. "You need to leave before you're asked to leave." Mr. Reed stared at the floor. Officer Price looked away. The older deputy smirked into his coffee. Maya felt anger pass through her, hot and clean, but she did not let it stay on her face. Anger was useful only when it had somewhere lawful to go. Mrs. Carter picked up the photograph, holding it more carefully than anyone in that room had held her complaint. As she turned, her eyes met Maya's. There was no plea in them, just exhaustion. And beneath it, something that had not broken yet. Maya gave the smallest nod. Mrs. Carter saw it. She did not know what it meant, but she took it with her as she walked out of the building. The lobby seemed quieter after she left, although the phones still rang and the vending machine still hummed. Some absences make more noise than presence ever could. At 1:05, Linda finally picked up Maya's form again. For a moment, Maya thought she might enter it. Instead, Linda carried it to the back counter and dropped it into a tray marked pending. There were other forms beneath it, some yellowed at the edges, some with sticky notes curled from age. Maya could not read the names from where she sat, but she could see enough to know the tray was not a process. It was a graveyard. Samuel Reed followed the motion with tired eyes. That, where complaints go to die. Linda turned around sharply. "Excuse me?" Samuel looked down at his hat. "Nothing, ma'am." "No," Maya said softly, not looking away from the tray. "It wasn't nothing." Linda heard that. Her lips pressed together. "You sure do have a lot of opinions for someone waiting on a passport form." Maya gave her a calm look. "I haven't given you an opinion yet." The older deputy laughed. "You hear that, Linda? She thinks she's got something to say." Maya did not answer. She did not need to. The button near her collar had heard enough to tell the story for her when the time came. A few minutes later, Officer Price came around the side of the counter with a stack of files. He passed close enough to Maya to speak without the others hearing clearly. "Mrs. Carter comes in every week." Maya kept her eyes forward. "And every week she gets sent away?" Price swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" His jaw tightened. For a second, Maya thought he might say it. Then, the older deputy called his name from behind the desk. "Price." "Files don't walk themselves." Price stepped away. "Sorry, ma'am." Maya watched him go. Fear had a particular posture. It bent the shoulders slightly and made honest people speak in unfinished sentences. At 1:26, Sheriff Reeves came out again, this time with his sleeves rolled to the forearms and his cigar gone. He paused when he saw Maya still seated in the same place. Then he saw Samuel Reed beside her. His face changed into something almost amused. "Lord have mercy," Reeves said. "You two still holding court out here?" Samuel did not answer. Maya looked up. "I'm still waiting to file my report." Reeves smiled. "And I'm still sheriff. Looks like we both know our roles." Linda laughed lightly, eager to be on the right side of his humor. Reeves walked closer, slow enough that everyone in the lobby felt it. He stopped in front of Maya's chair, hands resting on his belt. The gold star on his chest caught the light from the window. "You know what I admire?" he asked. Maya said nothing. "Persistence," Reeves continued. "Now, intelligence is knowing when persistence turns into foolishness." Maya held his gaze. "I suppose that depends on who has the most to lose." For the first time, the smile flickered. Reeves looked at her. Really looked, but still, not deeply enough. He saw calm and mistook it for stubbornness. He saw youth and mistook it for ignorance. He saw black skin and plain clothes and an old purse, and his imagination stopped there. He leaned down slightly. "Listen carefully. If you sit there all day and nothing happens, that's not injustice. That's education." Maya's expression did not change. "Then, I'm learning a great deal." The older deputy snorted. Linda looked nervous now, as if the conversation had drifted beyond the kind of disrespect she knew how to manage. Reeves straightened and turned toward the counter. "Linda, don't take another word from her unless she's leaving." "Yes, Sheriff." He glanced at Samuel Reed. "And Mr. Reed, if you keep bothering my staff, I'll have someone walk you out. Being old doesn't make you harmless." Samuel's face tightened, but he nodded once. Not because he agreed. Because he had been surviving men like Reeves longer than Maya had been alive. Reeves walked back toward the secured door, then stopped under the sign on the wall. "To serve and protect." He did not look at it. Men like him rarely looked at the promises behind them. When the door shut, Samuel let out a slow breath. "You should go on home, young lady," he said quietly. "Whatever brought you here, it ain't worth what they'll do to your spirit if you let them." Maya looked toward the tray marked pending. She thought of Mrs. Carter's photograph, of Leon Carter's name buried under a false report, of Samuel's son losing his job because someone could not be bothered to read a middle name. Then she looked back at Samuel. "Some things are worth waiting for," she said. The old man studied her for a moment. Something in his eyes shifted. Not understanding exactly. Not yet. But recognition, perhaps, that the woman beside him was not waiting the way other people waited. The lobby grew hotter. The clock kept moving. The staff kept pretending the citizens in front of them were interruptions, instead of the reason the building existed. Maya sat still, and every minute Sheriff Reeves left her there gave her one more piece of the office he thought he controlled. By 1:43, the lobby had become a test of endurance. The air conditioner had been silent for more than half an hour, and the heat no longer sat above the room. It had settled into the plastic chairs, the old carpet runner by the door, the glass partition at the counter, even the paper forms stacked beside Linda Crow's keyboard. A thin shine had formed on Samuel Reed's forehead. Maya could feel warmth gathering beneath the collar of her brown jacket, right where the small button camera rested against the fabric. She did not move to adjust it. A woman across the lobby fanned herself with a folded traffic citation. An older man who had come in to ask about a property report stood up, muttered something about coming back another day, and left without speaking to anyone at the counter. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked his name. Nobody cared whether his problem mattered. The building had taught him the lesson Sheriff Reeves wanted everyone to learn. Leaving was easier than being ignored. Samuel watched the man go. "That's how they win," he said quietly. Maya looked over. "By making people leave? By making folks feel foolish for asking to be treated right." The words stayed with her. They had the weight of age behind them, and pain, and the kind of experience no academy could teach. Maya had spent years learning procedure, evidence handling, interview strategy, federal jurisdiction, internal affairs protocols, but Samuel Reed understood something simpler and older. Power did not always shout. Sometimes it just made a person wait long enough to feel smaller. At the counter, Linda picked up a ringing phone and answered with a brightness she had not offered a single citizen in the lobby. "Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office. How may I direct your call?" She listened, then smiled. "Of course, Mrs. Harlan. I'll put you right through." Maya's eyes lowered to her purse. Harlan again. Linda pressed a button and transferred the call to the inner office. A moment later, through the partly closed hallway door, Reeves's voice rose. "Yes, ma'am." "No, ma'am, there's nothing to worry about. I told Robert the same thing. People can ask all they want. Asking ain't evidence." There was a pause, followed by Reeves's low laugh. "No, ma'am. That woman Carter can come here every day until Christmas. It won't change the file." Samuel's hands tightened around his hat. He had heard it too. So had Officer Price. The younger officer froze near the copier, a stack of papers in his hand. Then, slowly, he lowered his eyes and kept working. Maya sat very still. The button recorded Reeves's voice, the casual cruelty, the name, the pattern. She knew the audio would not be perfect through the hallway door. It did not have to be. It was context. It was corroboration. It was another thread in a rope. Reeves did not realize he was tying around himself. At 1:58, Linda rose and walked toward the hallway with a folder tucked under one arm. Before entering the secured area, she glanced back at Maya. "You still waiting?" Maya gave her a polite nod. "Yes." Linda smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. "Suit yourself. Suit yourself." The door opened and closed behind her. For a short while, only the citizens remained in the front room with Officer Price and the older deputy. The older deputy had taken off his hat and was scratching the back of his neck, irritated by the same heat he had helped create. "Hell of a day for the air to go out," he said. Samuel looked up and, for one brave second, something almost like humor crossed his tired face. Funny how it was working before the sheriff got bothered. The older deputy stared at him. "You got something you want to say, Reed?" Samuel's courage retreated, but not completely. "No, sir. That's what I thought." Maya turned her head slightly. "He only made an observation." The deputy's eyes shifted to her. "Nobody asked you." "No," Maya said. But the room heard him. The deputy pushed himself away from the counter. "Lady, you are about 2 comments away from becoming a problem." Maya looked at him, calm and unblinking. "Then I hope someone writes it down correctly." Officer Price stepped between them before the older deputy could answer. "I'll take these to records," he said quickly. lifting the papers in his hand. Frank. Linda wanted those intake copies checked. The older deputy, Frank, gave Maya one last hard look before turning away. Atlanta, mouth, he muttered. Maya heard it. The camera heard it. Samuel heard it too. And his face carried the kind of worry older black men often showed when younger black people spoke too plainly in the wrong room. Not because they disagreed, but because they knew how fast plain words could be punished. You gotta be careful, Samuel whispered. Maya's expression softened. I know. No, ma'am. I mean really careful. She held his eyes for a moment. I am. At 2-7, the secured door opened again, and Deputy Mark Ellison stepped into the lobby. He was in his late 50s, broad through the shoulders, with tired eyes and a mustache going gray at the edges. He carried himself like a man who had spent a lifetime following rules, and too many years watching other men break them from above. Maya had noticed him earlier near the hallway, saying little, seeing more than he wanted to admit. He paused when the heat hit him. Then he looked at Maya, then at Samuel, then at the thermostat. A shadow crossed his face. Frank noticed him and said, "Sheriff said, let them sweat." Mark did not answer right away. His jaw moved once, as if he had bitten down on words that wanted out. That so? Frank shrugged. His building. Mark's eyes moved to the sign on the wall. To serve and protect. For a second, he looked older than he had when he entered. He walked to the vending machine, dug $2 bills from his wallet, and fed them into the slot. The machine coughed, hummed, and dropped a bottle of water. Then, another. He picked them up, crossed the lobby, and stopped beside Samuel first. "Mr. Reed," he said, keeping his voice low, "you should drink something." Samuel looked startled. "Deputy Ellison, I'm all right. Didn't ask if you were all right." Mark handed him the bottle. "Just said drink something." Samuel accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." Mark turned to Maya. He held out the second bottle. His face was careful, guarded, but his eyes were not unkind. "Ma'am," he said, "it's warm in here." Maya took the bottle. "It is." For a moment, neither of them said anything. The whole lobby seemed to narrow around that small exchange. Frank watched from the counter. Officer Price looked over from the copy machine. Linda had not yet returned, but the building itself seemed to be listening. Mark lowered his voice. "I'm sorry. This isn't how it's supposed to be." Maya looked up at him, and this time she let the full weight of her attention rest on his face. He was not innocent. Men who stood close to wrongdoing for years did not get to call themselves innocent. But there was shame in him, and shame, if it did not rot into excuses, could become the beginning of truth. "Then remember that when somebody asks what happened here today," Maya said. Mark's face changed. "Not much. Just enough." He glanced toward the secured hallway. "Some questions cost a man." Maya kept her voice gentle. "So does silence." The words struck him harder than she expected. He looked away, toward Samuel, toward the closed door, toward the counter where Frank was pretending not to listen. Then he nodded once, not like a promise, but like a man acknowledging a debt he was not yet brave enough to pay. Linda returned at 2:12, saw the water bottles, and stopped. "Deputy Ellison," she said sharply. "The sheriff said nobody was to encourage them to sit around all day." Mark turned slowly. "Offering water isn't encouragement, Linda. It's basic decency." Frank let out a low whistle. "Careful, Mark." Mark ignored him, but Maya saw the tension in his shoulders. Courage had entered the room, but it had entered quietly, wearing fear like an old coat. At 2:14, exactly 5.5 hours after Maya had first walked through the front door, the secured office door opened once more. Sheriff Reeves stepped out with Linda just behind him. His face carried that satisfied irritation of a man preparing to end a nuisance. He looked at Maya, then at Samuel, then at the water bottle in Maya's hand. "Well," he said, "looks like hospitality has gone further than patience." Linda came forward with Maya's untouched form in her hand. It had never been entered, never been stamped, never been assigned a number. She held it by the corner as though it were something mildly unpleasant. "Ma'am," Linda said, "the sheriff won't be seeing you today. You can come back in about 6 weeks and try again." Samuel closed his eyes. Officer Price stopped moving. Mark Ellison stared at the floor. Maya looked at the form, then at Linda, then past her to Sheriff Reeves. He was smiling again, certain the little lesson had ended exactly as he intended. He thought the woman in the brown jacket had spent the day waiting for him. He had no idea he had spent the day performing for her. Maya placed the unopened water bottle on the chair beside her, smoothed the front of her jacket, and stood. Maya rose slowly, not because she was tired, though she was, and not because the heat had weakened her, though the room had been made deliberately cruel. She rose the way a person rises when the waiting is over and the record is complete. For half a second, nobody understood what had changed. Linda still held the form by the corner. Sheriff Reeves still stood with that lazy smile on his face. Frank leaned against the counter, waiting for the little show to end. Officer Price froze beside the copier. Mark Ellison looked up from the floor, his eyes moving from Maya's face to the button near her collar. Samuel Reed held the unopened bottle of water in both hands. Maya smoothed the front of her brown jacket one last time. Linda gave a short breath. "Ma'am, I said you can come back in 6 weeks." "I heard you," Maya said. "Then you need to leave." Sheriff Reeves chuckled. "Now, Linda, let's not rush her. She spent all day learning patience. Might as well let her practice walking out with dignity." The older deputy laughed again, though less strongly this time. Something in Maya's stillness had begun to bother him. Maya looked at Reeves. "Sheriff, before I leave, I want to make sure I understand your office's position." Reeves lifted his chin. "Our position is you came in here with a missing passport, wasted my staff's time, and refused to accept that your little problem is not a county emergency. My form was never entered into your intake system." Linda stiffened. "We were busy. You placed it in a pending tray without assigning a report number. That's procedure when we're backed up." Maya turned slightly toward the counter. Mr. Reed's correction request was also delayed. Mrs. Carter's complaint was refused. The woman with 2 children was told she had the wrong form after being given that form by your office. A man in work boots handed over an envelope, and his paperwork was processed within 10 minutes. The lobby went silent. Linda's face tightened. "You don't know what you saw." Maya's gaze did not move. "I know exactly what I saw." Reeves took one step forward. His smile was gone now, replaced by the cold impatience of a man who had enjoyed cruelty only while it stayed unchallenged. "You better be careful," he said. "Accusing law enforcement officers of misconduct inside a sheriff's office is not something I recommend for a woman in your position." Maya tilted her head slightly. "And what position is that?" His eyes swept over her again. The same old mistake repeated because men like him trusted their first prejudice more than any fact that followed. "Alone," he said. Samuel Reed stopped turning the bottle in his hands. Mark Ellison looked away. Maya reached into her purse. Frank straightened immediately. "Hands, where we can see them." Maya paused and looked at him. "I'm going to remove identification from my purse. Nothing more." Reeves gave a dismissive wave. "Let her. Maybe she's finally found that VIP card I told her to get." Maya opened the purse and removed a slim black leather case. She held it closed for one moment, letting every eye in the room settle on it. Then she placed it on the reception counter directly beside her untouched report form. The sound it made was soft, but it seemed to carry through the whole building. She opened it. Inside was a federal credential and a badge. Linda's color drained first. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Frank stepped back from the counter, as if the badge had heat of its own. Officer Price lowered the papers in his hand. Mark Ellison stared at the credential, then at Maya, and the shame already in his face deepened into recognition. Sheriff Reeves did not move, not at first. His eyes narrowed, reading the words once, then again, as though the letters might rearrange themselves into something less dangerous. Maya, William, Federal Integrity Task Force, Internal Affairs Command Authority, DOJ, Civil Rights Liaison. Maya reached to her collar, gently twisted the small dark button free, and set it on the counter beside the badge. "This is a recording device," she said. "It has been active since before I entered your office." Linda took one step back. "You recorded us?" "Yes," Frank blurted. "That's illegal." Maya turned her eyes to him. Georgia is a one-party consent state. I was present for the conversations I recorded, and for the conversations that occurred beyond direct participation, federal review will determine admissibility. Either way, your conduct has been documented. Reeves found his voice, but it came out lower than before. You came into my office under false pretenses. No, Maya said. I came in as a citizen asking for help. You lied about the passport. I created an intake scenario authorized by a federal integrity operation. Your office failed that scenario within 6 minutes. Linda grabbed the edge of the counter as if to steady herself. I was just following intake procedure. Maya looked at the untouched form. No, Miss Crow. You were following orders. The words landed where they needed to. Linda's eyes flicked, almost involuntarily, toward Reeves. Maya saw it. So did the camera. So did everyone. Reeves pointed at the badge. I don't care what task force you claim to be with. I'm an elected sheriff. You don't walk into Pine Hollow County and take over my office. Maya reached back into her purse and removed a folded document sealed in a clear sleeve. She opened it and placed it next to the badge. This is an emergency command restriction issued this morning through the State Attorney General's office in coordination with federal civil rights authorities and the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. It remained inactive unless field conditions confirmed obstruction, discriminatory denial of service, or risk of evidence suppression. Reeves stared at the paper. Maya's voice stayed even. 5.5 hours is more than enough time to evaluate your office, Sheriff. Samuel Reed slowly stood. Nobody told him to sit down. Maya continued. During that time, your staff refused to process a federal identification complaint, delayed or discarded citizen reports, accepted preferential paperwork following an apparent envelope exchange, made discriminatory remarks, threatened citizens with removal, and discussed suppressing materials connected to the Harlan case. You personally ordered the lobby air conditioning shut off to make citizens uncomfortable. You personally stated that in this building, justice moves when you say it moves. Frank muttered. Sheriff, shut up. Reeves snapped. That single word told Maya more than he intended. Panic makes corrupt men stop performing manners. Maya picked up the button camera and held it between 2 fingers. You were right about one thing, Sheriff. Justice does move, but not at your command. Reeves stepped closer. You think you can embarrass me in my own building? No, Maya said. You did that yourself. His face reddened. You listen to me, young lady. No, Sheriff. You've had 5.5 hours to speak. The sentence cut through the room. Maya turned to Mark Ellison. Deputy Ellison, as ranking command staff present after Sheriff Reeves, you are instructed to preserve all records, body camera files, intake logs, internal phone recordings, visitor sign-ins, and surveillance footage. No deletions, no transfers, no off-site removals. Do you understand? Mark swallowed. He looked at Reeves, then at Maya. Years of fear moved across his face. So did the memory of the water bottle. Finally, he nodded. Yes, ma'am, he said. I understand. Reeves looked at him like betrayal had walked in wearing his deputy's uniform. Mark did not answer him. Maya looked back at Reeves. Pending federal and state review. You are relieved of command authority over this office. Reeves gave a harsh laugh, but it broke in the middle. You can't fire me. Maya held his gaze. The voters elected you. The law can still stop you. And as of this moment, Sheriff Reeves, you are finished giving orders in this building. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then from outside came the sound of vehicles pulling into the lot. Not one, several. Doors opened. Radios crackled. Through the front windows, blue jackets moved toward the entrance. Their steps steady. Their faces unfamiliar to Pine Hollow County. Agent Marcus Reed entered first. He was broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, calm in the way experienced federal agents often were when they had already seen the worst part coming. He looked once at Maya, once at the badge on the counter, and then at Sheriff Reeves. Maya, he said, we have the preservation order ready. She nodded. Good. Start with the intake system and the Harlan file. At the sound of that name, Reeves's face finally changed. Not anger now. Fear. Small, but unmistakable. Maya saw it, and she knew the day had shifted. The man who had made citizens wait for justice was about to learn what it felt like to stand still while the truth entered the room. Samuel Reed looked at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. "You weren't here about a passport," he said quietly. Maya turned to him, and her voice softened. "No, sir," she said. "I was here to find out what happens to people who are." Behind them, the sign on the wall still read, "To serve and protect." For the first time all day, the words no longer sounded like a lie left unchallenged. The lobby did not explode into chaos. That was what frightened Sheriff Reeves most. If agents had rushed in shouting, if doors had slammed, if someone had drawn a weapon, he would have known how to perform for that. He would have widened his stance, barked orders, reminded everyone that this was his building, his county, his badge. But Agent Marcus Reed and the federal team entered with calm faces, sealed folders, evidence bags, and the kind of quiet authority that did not need volume to be believed. 2 agents moved to the reception counter. One went directly to the security camera system mounted behind the glass partition. Another stood by the hallway that led to records. No one asked permission from Linda Crow. No one looked to Sheriff Reeves for approval. Reeves watched them pass him, and the muscle in his jaw jumped. "This is still a county office," he said. Agent Reed removed a document from a blue folder and handed it to Deputy Mark Ellison. "And it is now under a preservation order. No files are to be moved, deleted, altered, copied off-site, or removed from this building without federal review." Mark took the paper with both hands. He read the first lines, but Maya could tell he was not really reading. He was absorbing the fact that the world he had feared for 20 years had shifted in less than 5 minutes. Reeves stepped toward him. "Mark, don't you touch anything until I say so." Maya turned her head. "Sheriff Reeves, your command authority has been restricted. Any instruction you give regarding records, personnel, evidence, or access will be treated as possible obstruction." The word obstruction landed hard. Linda's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Frank, the older deputy, suddenly found something very interesting on the floor. Officer Price stood near the copier, pale but alert, like a man watching the bridge behind him burn and the road ahead finally appear. Reeves gave a laugh too sharp to be real. "You people love big words." Agent Reed looked at him. "We also love complete records." He nodded to one of the agents, a woman with a short haircut and a black evidence kit. "Start with intake." Linda moved quickly. Too quickly. "That system is password protected." The agent did not smile. "Then you'll enter the password. I'd need authorization." "You have it." Linda looked at Reeves. It was instinct, not strategy. Maya saw it. Reed saw it. Mark saw it too. Reeves's eyes hardened. "Linda," Maya said. "Miss Crow, this is the moment where following his orders can no longer be confused with doing your job." Linda swallowed. Her face had gone the gray-white color of a person realizing that loyalty had been a one-way street. She turned to the keyboard and typed the password with trembling fingers. The intake screen opened. The first agent began taking photographs of the monitor. Another inserted a forensic drive to make a read-only copy. Agent Reed stood back and watched without interfering. That was his gift. He knew when to command and when to let the evidence speak. Maya moved closer to the counter. "Search pending reports from the last 90 days. Filter for complaints, corrections, and citizen statements marked incomplete, hold, or sheriff review." Linda closed her eyes for half a second. The agent entered the terms. The list filled the screen. No one spoke. There were more entries than the room expected. Dozens. Some had names attached. Some were half-entered. Some carried no report number at all. Maya saw notes in abbreviated language. Hold for SR. Do not process. Referred to sheriff. No action. Carter inquiry. Harlan related. Citizen. Persistent. Samuel Reed stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Is my boys in there?" Maya looked at the screen. "Not yet, Mr. Reed, but we're going to find every file." His lips pressed together. He nodded once and stepped back. clutching his folder to his chest like it was the only piece of his son the county had not taken from him. Reeves pointed toward the lobby. This is exactly the problem. You're turning routine administrative clutter into some civil rights circus. Agent Reed turned slowly. Sheriff, I have worked civil rights cases in counties where people said the exact same thing right before we found the locked cabinet. For the first time, Reeves did not have an answer ready. Maya caught the flicker. Where is the Harlan file kept? She asked Linda. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. Reeves snapped. There is no active Harlan file. Maya did not look at him. Miss Crow, where is it kept? Linda's eyes moved to the records hallway. That was enough. Agent Reed gestured to two agents. Records room. Reeves stepped in front of the hallway. You are not walking into secure county records without a local warrant. Reed held up another document. State Attorney General Preservation Authority. Federal Civil Rights Investigation. Emergency Evidence Retention Order. Take your pick. This is overreach. No, Reed said. Overreach is a sheriff deciding which citizens get law and which ones get heat in the lobby. The room went still. Maya watched Reeves's face darken. Men like him could survive legal language. They could survive procedure. What they hated was being described plainly. The agents walked past him. For a moment, Maya thought Reeves might physically block the door. His shoulders shifted, his hand flexed near his belt, and Frank straightened as though waiting to follow his lead. But Reeves was many things. Arrogant, corrupt, cruel. He was not foolish enough to put his hands on a federal agent in front of witnesses and cameras. He stepped aside. The records room smelled of dust, cardboard, toner, and old coffee. File cabinets lined the walls, some labeled neatly, others marked with peeling tape. Maya entered behind the agents, leaving the lobby door open. She wanted the staff to see. She wanted the citizens to see. Hidden things lost power when exposed to ordinary light. One cabinet stood apart from the others, tucked behind a rolling cart stacked with traffic citations. It was newer than the rest, and locked with a separate key. Agent Reed looked at Linda. Key, Linda whispered. Sheriff has it. Reeves stood in the doorway. Private, administrative files. Maya looked at him. County files. Created by public employees, using public systems inside a sheriff's office, are not private, because you put them in a different cabinet. Reed turned to Mark. Deputy Ellison? Mark hesitated. Reeves said, low and dangerous. Think carefully. Mark's face tightened. Maya saw the war inside him. Pension, mortgage, reputation, fear, and the memory of a bottle of water handed to a woman who had been deliberately humiliated. Slowly, Mark reached into his pocket and removed a small ring of keys. Reeves stared at him. You kept a duplicate? Mark did not look at him. County policy requires one. That policy was changed. No, Mark said, voice quiet but steady. You just told us not to use it. He handed the key to Agent Reed. The lock clicked open. Inside were files with no official tracking labels. Harlan, Carter, intake exceptions, citizen escalations, campaign security. The names sat in the drawer like buried bones. Maya felt the room tighten around her. Reed pulled the Harlan folder first and handed it to the evidence agent. Photograph before removal. Full chain of custody. The agent nodded and began. Maya opened the Carter folder with gloved hands. The first page was a copy of a complaint letter signed by Evelyn Carter. The second was another letter. Then another. Different dates. Same plea. Same refusal. Attached to one was a handwritten note. Keeps coming back. Sheriff says no intake. Maya thought of Mrs. Carter holding the photograph against her chest. She thought of Leon Carter's name trapped in a report that had lied about him. She closed the folder carefully. Anger could wait. Evidence could not. Behind her, Reeves said, You don't know what you're looking at. Maya turned. Then explain it. He said nothing. Agent Reed looked through another file. His face changed, not dramatically, but enough for Maya to notice. Maya. She stepped beside him. He held up a thin report stamped. Closed. Beneath it was another report. Same case number, different language, different diagram, different witness summary. The original. The altered version. Maya looked from the documents to Reeves. The sheriff's confidence had not vanished. It had cracked. And through that crack, for the first time, something like fear had begun to show. Reed placed both reports into separate evidence sleeves. Maya's voice was low. "Lock down the building." Agent Reed nodded to his team. "No one leaves with county property. Secure the servers. Pull the phone logs. Preserve the body cam archive." In the lobby, Samuel Reed stood beside the sign that read, "To serve and protect," watching agents carry out boxes of files that the office had pretended did not exist. He removed his hat slowly, not out of respect for the sheriff, out of respect for the truth finally being carried into daylight. The first thing Maya noticed about the Harlan file was not what it contained. It was what it avoided. The report was too clean. That was usually where a lie began. Real accident reports carried the rough edges of confusion. A corrected time. A witness who remembered something late. A measurement scribbled twice because rain had smeared the first note. A deputy's sentence that ran too long because fear and adrenaline had not yet settled into grammar. But this file looked polished. Every paragraph moved Evan Harlan farther from responsibility and pushed Leon Carter closer to blame. Maya sat at a folding table in the temporary evidence room the federal team had set up inside an unused conference room at the sheriff's office. Agent Marcus Reed stood beside a whiteboard, sleeves rolled up, reading through inventory sheets while two evidence technicians copied drives from the department server. The air conditioning had been turned back on, but the room still held the memory of heat. The original report lay on Maya's left. The altered report lay on her right. Same case number, same date, same location, Old Mill Road, 2 miles east of Route 16. Same late-night crash, different truth. In the original version, Evan Harlan's truck crossed the center line. In the altered version, Leon Carter's sedan drifted first. In the original, the responding deputy noted, "Strong odor of alcohol from Harlan." In the altered version, that sentence was gone. In the original, a field sobriety test was marked, attempted, incomplete. In the altered version, there was no mention of alcohol at all. Maya turned the page slowly. "Marcus," she said. Agent Reed looked over. "What did you find?" There was a blood draw. He crossed the room. Maya pointed to the bottom of the original incident supplement. EMS noted visible injury and transported Evan Harlan to Pine Hollow General. Responding deputy requested blood alcohol screening at 12:43 a.m. Reed leaned in. "Result? Missing from the official file." He exhaled through his nose. "Of course it is." Maya did not answer. She kept reading. A second note appeared in the original report, written by Deputy Mark Ellison and time-stamped just after 2 a.m. It said, "Body camera 3B captured initial statements from L. Carter and E. Harlan. Preserve footage." In the altered report, the body camera was listed as corrupted. Reed tapped the page with one finger. "That gives us 2 tracks. Medical records and body cam storage." Maya nodded. "And the Carter family." Reed studied her for a moment. "You want to go see Evelyn Carter?" "I need to. We can send someone." "No." Maya closed the file gently. She came into that lobby with her husband's photograph pressed against her chest. I watched them push it back at her like it was trash mail. She deserves to hear from someone who actually read the file. Reed did not argue. He knew the difference between emotion and duty. He also knew Maya well enough to understand that, for her, the two often walked in the same direction. 40 minutes later, Maya drove through Pine Hollow in a gray government sedan that looked like every rental car ever parked outside a courthouse. The town moved slowly in the afternoon heat. A hardware store with faded red awnings. A Baptist church with a sign announcing Wednesday Bible study. A small diner with a chalkboard advertising meatloaf, collard greens, peach cobbler, and bottomless coffee. Pickup trucks sat in angled parking spots along Main Street, and American flags hung from porches that had seen better paint and harder years. It was the kind of town where people waved because they recognized the car, or because they wanted to know why they did not. Evelyn Carter lived at the end of a quiet road shaded by pecan trees. The house was small, white, and carefully kept, with flower pots on the steps and a wind chime moving softly in the warm breeze. A folded flag sat in a triangular display case visible through the front window. Beside it stood a framed photograph of a younger Leon Carter in uniform. Maya knocked. It took a moment. Then Evelyn opened the door. She had changed out of the Navy church dress, but not out of the dignity she had carried into the sheriff's office. She wore a pale blue blouse and held a dish towel in one hand. Her eyes rested on Maya's face, then dropped briefly to the federal badge clipped inside Maya's open jacket. Something passed between them then. Not surprise, exactly. More like the confirmation of a feeling Evelyn had not dared trust. "You were in the lobby," Evelyn said. "Yes, ma'am." "You were not there about a passport." "No, ma'am. I was not." Evelyn stepped back. "Come in." The house smelled of lemon cleaner, coffee, and something sweet cooling somewhere in the kitchen. Peach pie, Maya thought. On the coffee table were stacks of papers arranged so neatly that the neatness itself was heartbreaking. Complaint copies, medical bills, insurance letters, photographs, a spiral notebook filled with dates and names. Evelyn saw Maya looking. "When people keep telling you there's no record, you start making your own." Maya sat across from her. "Mrs. Carter, I reviewed 2 versions of the crash report." Evelyn's hand tightened around the dish towel. "2? Yes. One appears to be the original. The other is the official version your family was shown." Evelyn's mouth trembled once, but her voice stayed firm. "And they're different." "They are." For a few seconds, Evelyn looked toward the window, where the late sun touched the edge of the flag case. "Leon told me from that hospital bed that the boy came over the line. He said it before the pain medicine, before surgery, before anybody could tell him what to say. My husband is not a perfect man, Agent William, but he is not a liar," Maya said. "I believe the original file supports what he told you." Evelyn closed her eyes. It was not relief. Not fully. Relief would have required the world to become fair much sooner than this. What passed over Evelyn's face was heavier. The exhaustion of finally being believed after being treated like grief had made her unreasonable. "He lost his job," Evelyn said quietly. "Not because he couldn't work, because folks read that report and decided he was careless. Drunk, some said, though the report didn't even have the courage to say it plain. Just enough words to poison a man's name." Maya listened. "He stopped wearing his veteran's cap for a while," Evelyn continued. "Said he didn't want people thanking him for service in the grocery store and whispering about him in the parking lot." Maya looked at the photograph on the wall. Leon Carter standing in uniform, shoulders square, eyes young and steady. Men like him had been asked to believe in country, law, duty, and patience. Then, too often, they had been asked to quietly survive the betrayal of all 4. "Where is Mr. Carter now?" Maya asked. "Physical therapy in Macon. Our daughter takes him twice a week." Evelyn gave a faint, tired smile. "He says he's going to walk without that cane by Thanksgiving." Stubborn man. That stubbornness may be why the truth is still alive. Evelyn looked at her then. Really looked. "Are you going to open the case?" Maya did not offer false comfort. People who had been lied to by officials deserved careful truth. "We're preserving records. We're tracing the body cam footage. We'll subpoena the medical records for the blood alcohol test. And we're investigating whether Sheriff Reeves or anyone else altered reports or blocked your complaints." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That sounds like a lot of words." "It is. Will it mean anything?" Maya leaned forward. "It will if the evidence holds. And right now, Mrs. Carter, the evidence is starting to speak." Evelyn reached for the brown envelope she had carried earlier that day. From it, she removed copies of every complaint she had filed, each marked with a date, each bearing some small sign of refusal. "No intake number. Wrong form. Come back Monday. Sheriff review. Pending." She placed them in Maya's hands. "I don't want revenge," Evelyn said. "I just want somebody with a badge to tell the truth without being paid to hide it." Maya held the papers carefully. "Then that is what we will work toward." Evelyn studied her for another moment. "You're young." "Yes, ma'am. You know how many young people come through here promising to fix old things?" "I do." "And you still think you can?" Maya looked toward the flag case, then back at Evelyn. "No, ma'am. Not alone. But I don't think wrong gets to become permanent just because it got old." For the first time, Evelyn's face softened. When Maya left the house, The sun had begun to drop behind the pecan trees. She carried the envelope in an evidence sleeve on the passenger seat, beside her purse and the silent phone she had not yet checked. As she drove back toward town, she passed the sheriff's office from a distance. The cruisers were still parked out front. The flags still moved in the warm air. The building still looked like authority. But now Maya had seen what was underneath the official version. A man's name had been buried. A family had been ignored. And somewhere inside Pine Hollow County, a sheriff who believed a file could stay closed forever was about to learn that paper had a memory too. By the time Maya returned to the sheriff's office, the late afternoon light had turned the red brick building a deeper, harsher shade. It no longer looked like a public office to her. It looked like something that had learned how to wear a flag out front and a locked cabinet in the back without feeling the contradiction. Inside, the federal team was still working. Evidence boxes sat along the wall of the conference room. A printer hummed steadily. 2 technicians were imaging the department's server while Agent Marcus Reed stood over a table covered with file inventories, call logs, and handwritten notes pulled from drawers nobody had meant for outsiders to open. Maya placed Evelyn Carter's envelope into an evidence sleeve and signed the chain of custody form. Reed looked up. "How is she?" "Still standing," Maya said. "That's not the same as fine." "No," Maya replied. "It isn't." Reed studied her face, then looked at the envelope. She had copies? Every complaint, every date, every refusal. She kept better records than the sheriff's office. That happens more often than it should. Maya removed her jacket and draped it over the back of a chair. The room was cool now, but she could still feel the memory of the lobby heat on her skin. The Carter case is bigger than a bad report. They trained the front desk to stop the truth before it became paperwork. Reed nodded toward the hallway. "Then we start with the people who were trained." The interviews began at 4:15. Linda Crow sat first. She held a paper cup of water with both hands. Though she barely drank from it, her earlier confidence had drained away, leaving behind a woman who suddenly understood that saying, "I was told to," would not erase what she had done. Maya sat across from her. Reed stood near the wall, silent. "Miss Crow," Maya said, "who instructed you not to process complaints connected to the Harlan accident?" Linda swallowed. "I don't know what you mean by not process." Maya opened a folder and placed a copy of Evelyn Carter's complaint on the table. This was submitted 3 weeks after the crash. No intake number, no assignment. Handwritten note says, "Sheriff Review." "Is that your handwriting?" Linda looked down. "It looks like mine." "That wasn't my question." Linda's fingers tightened around the cup. "Yes. Who told you to mark it that way?" Linda glanced toward the closed door. Maya waited. "Finally," Linda said. "Sheriff Reeves handled sensitive matters himself." Sensitive meaning what? Political, high profile, things that could get taken out of context. Maya leaned back slightly. "A veteran accused in a crash he may not have caused is not a political inconvenience, Miss Crow. He is a citizen." Linda's eyes flickered with shame. But shame was not yet courage. "I just worked the desk." "No," Maya said gently. "You controlled the first door." Linda did not answer after that. Officer Daniel Price came next. He sat stiffly, knees together, hat turning in his hands like a younger version of Samuel Reed, except his fear came with a badge. "You were present when Sheriff Reeves told staff not to write anything down about the Harlan boy," Maya said. Price looked at Reed, then back at Maya. "I heard things." "What things?" His throat moved. "That the file was closed. That any Carter family complaint was to go straight to Linda or the sheriff. That body cam questions were to be answered with technical issue and nothing else." "Was the body camera corrupted?" Price stared at the table. "I don't know." "Officer Price." He closed his eyes briefly. "I don't think so." "Why?" "Because I saw it in the temporary archive the morning after the crash. It had a flag on it for review. By the next day, it was gone from the regular system." "Who had access?" "Sheriff Reeves, Deputy Ellison, records admin. Maybe it, but IT doesn't touch evidence unless told." Maya wrote that down. "Why didn't you report it?" Price let out a small, bitter laugh with no humor in it. "To who?" That answer stayed in the room longer than the question. By the time Mark Ellison came in, the courthouse clock across town had struck 5. He sat heavily, like every joint in his body had aged during the day. He looked at Maya, then at Reed. "I want my union rep," he said. "That is your right," Reed answered. Mark nodded but did not move. "And I want it noted that I'm not refusing to cooperate." "It will be noted," Maya said. Mark rubbed both hands over his face. "You don't understand this county. Reeves has friends everywhere. Judges, commissioners, donors, church boards. You think a file goes missing and everybody asks questions? Around here, people ask who benefits from remembering." Maya kept her voice even. "And who benefited from forgetting Evan Harlan's blood alcohol result?" Mark looked down. "Deputy Ellison," Maya said. "You handed me water today because you knew what was happening in that lobby was wrong. I'm asking you now about something much worse." His eyes came up, tired and defensive. "You think I don't know that? I think you've known for a long time." The words hit him hard because they were not shouted. A man could defend himself against accusation. It was harder to defend himself against truth spoken quietly. Before he could answer, raised voices sounded from the hallway. Reed opened the conference room door. Sheriff Reeves stood near the records entrance with Frank and 2 other deputies. His face had regained some of its color, and with it, his arrogance. "Nobody gives another statement without county council present," he barked. "Nobody signs anything. Nobody hands over files unless I personally approve it." Maya stepped into the hallway. "You no longer have authority to issue that order." Reeves ignored her and looked at his staff. "You people better remember who signs your schedules, your promotions, and your recommendations. Federal folks go home. I don't." The hallway went silent. There it was. Not law. Not leadership. Fear. Spoken plainly. Reed moved beside Maya. "Sheriff Reeves." That sounded very close to witness intimidation. Reeves smiled. "Agent. Around here we call it management." Maya looked past him to the deputies. Price would not meet her eyes. Linda stood near the counter, frozen. Mark Ellison had come to the conference room doorway, and his face looked carved from old regret. Reeves turned and walked back toward his office as if he had won something. He had not. He had only given the building one more sentence to remember. At 6:10, Maya and Reed left the office long enough to sit in a booth at Ruthie's Diner, 2 blocks from the courthouse. The place smelled of coffee, fried chicken, and peach cobbler. A waitress in her 60s refilled Reed's cup without asking and called Maya honey, in a way that felt kind, not small. On the television above the counter, a local anchor spoke over footage of the sheriff's office. Federal officials were seen today entering the Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office as part of what sources describe as an administrative review. Reed watched the screen. By morning, Reeves will call it political. He already has. You ready for that? Maya looked out the window toward Main Street, where the courthouse dome rose above the trees. He didn't just bury a file, Marcus. He trained an office to bury people. Reed stirred his coffee. Then we proved the training came from the top. As if summoned by the words, a black county-issued Ford Expedition rolled past the diner windows and turned down the alley behind the courthouse. Maya recognized the vehicle from the sheriff's lot. Tinted windows. Official plate. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. One of the evidence techs had sent a still image from a rear security camera at the sheriff's office. Senator Robert Harlan, entering through the side door. No sign-in. No public meeting. No record. Maya turned the screen toward Reed. He looked at it and sighed. Orders from the top. Maya put the phone down beside her untouched coffee. Outside, evening settled over Pine Hollow County, soft and golden, pretending the town was peaceful. But under that light, behind side doors and sealed files, the truth was beginning to gather its witnesses. Deputy Mark Ellison did not go straight home after his shift ended. He drove past his own mailbox, past the little white house he had paid on for 23 years, and kept going until the paved road gave way to gravel near the old church cemetery. He parked under a pecan tree with his headlights off and sat there while the last orange light drained out of the Georgia sky. His hands were still on the steering wheel. He could feel the day in his bones, not the heat from the lobby, not the long hours, Not even the shock of federal agents walking through the sheriff's office, like they had every right to open drawers men had been told never to touch. What stayed with him was the sound of Maya Williams' voice when she said, "So does silence." Mark had heard plenty of accusations in his life. He had been called a coward by drunk men in handcuffs, a traitor by criminals who thought the law was personal, and a good man by church ladies who did not know what he had looked away from. But Maya had not called him anything. That was what made it worse. She had simply named the thing he had been living inside: silence. He looked across the cemetery at the small flag set beside veterans' graves. Leon Carter's name was not there, but Mark thought of him anyway. He remembered the night of the crash. Rain on Old Mill Road. Blue lights against wet pavement. Evan Harlan leaning against a deputy's cruiser, pale and angry, insisting he needed to call his father. Leon Carter on a stretcher, blood at his temple, saying again and again, "He came over the line." Mark had written down what he saw that night. Then, 2 days later, Sheriff Reeves had called him into his office. "This county doesn't need a political firestorm," Reeves had said. "Clean up the language. Stick to what can be proven." Mark had asked, weakly, "What about the blood draw?" Reeves had looked at him for a long time. "You close enough to retirement to know better than that." Mark had known better. That was the shame of it. He finally drove home after dark. His wife, Carol, had left the porch light on. She always did, even when she was mad at him, even when he came home too tired to talk. The kitchen smelled of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans cooked with bacon grease the way her mother had made them. A glass of sweet tea sat beside his plate. Carol was at the sink, washing a skillet. She was 60, with short gray hair and a patience that had worn thin in places but never torn all the way through. "You missed dinner," she said. "I know. Microwave still works." Mark hung his hat on the chair. "I'm not hungry." Carol turned off the water and looked at him. "You look like somebody died." Mark sat down slowly. "Not today." That made her study him harder. She dried her hands on a dish towel and came to the table. "Is this about what was on the news? Federal people at the office?" Mark did not answer quickly enough. Carol pulled out the chair across from him and sat. "Mark." He looked at his hands. They were broad, scarred in little places from years of work, years of cuffs, years of fixing things around the house because paying somebody else felt wasteful. Good hands, he used to think. Honest hands. Now he was not sure. "They opened the Harlan file," he said. Carol's face changed. She knew that name. Everybody in Pine Hollow knew that name. But she also knew her husband's silences, and she had lived with this one long enough to fear it. "What did they find?" Mark gave a short laugh. "Enough." Carol leaned back. "Lord, I didn't do the worst of it," he said, and hated himself as soon as the words came out. "No," Carol said quietly, "but that's not the same as doing right." He looked up then. There was no anger in her face. That made it harder. Anger would have given him something to push against. This was worse. This was disappointment, wrapped in love. "You think I don't know that?" he asked. "I think you've been trying not to know it for a long time." The house went quiet. Somewhere in the hallway, the old wall clock ticked with a stubborn rhythm. Mark remembered buying that clock when their son left for college. Carol had said the house was too quiet without him. Now the clock seemed to be counting down something Mark had spent years postponing. "I got 18 months, he said. 18 months and I can retire. Pension, health insurance, everything we worked for." Carol's eyes softened, but she did not let him hide there. "And what exactly are you retiring with, Mark? A check? Or a clean name?" He pushed back from the table and stood. "It's not that simple." "No," she said. "It never is. That's how folks talk themselves into living wrong. One day at a time." He walked out to the garage because he could not sit under her eyes anymore. The garage smelled of motor oil, dust, and cut grass. His old fishing rods leaned in the corner. A box of Christmas lights sat unopened on a shelf. On the workbench was a cardboard box marked Academy and uniforms. He had not opened it in years. He opened it now. Inside were photographs from the first decade of his career. Mark, at 28, slimmer, grinning beside his first patrol car. Mark and Carol at a department barbecue. Mark shaking hands with Sheriff Reeves, back when Reeves was still a deputy, with ambition hidden behind good manners. At the bottom was a small certificate from his first academy instructor. Integrity in service. Mark held it for a long time. Then he set it down and pulled a burner phone from behind a toolbox. He had bought it that afternoon from a gas station outside town, paying cash like a man in a movie, feeling foolish the whole time. Now he typed the number Agent Reed had given staff for protected contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. He saw Maya again, sitting in that lobby in the heat, taking a bottle of water from him with eyes that saw too much. Then he pressed call. Maya answered on the second ring. "This is William." Mark closed his eyes. "It's Ellison." A short silence followed. Not surprise. Readiness. "Are you safe to talk?" she asked. "No." "Then don't. I need to meet." "Where?" Mark looked toward the open garage door, toward the dark street beyond it. "Back lot of New Hope Baptist. 7 tomorrow morning, before the office opens." "I'll be there." He swallowed. "Agent William?" "Yes?" "I'm not a hero." Her voice came back steady. "I didn't ask for a hero, deputy. I asked for the truth." He ended the call before fear could talk him out of it. The next morning, mist still hung low over the grass behind New Hope Baptist Church when Maya pulled into the back lot. The church was old, white-painted, with a steeple that had weathered storms and arguments and funerals, and Sunday mornings when people came looking for forgiveness they were not yet ready to earn. Mark's pickup was already there. He stood beside it with a coffee cup in one hand and no hat on his head. Without the uniform hat, he looked less like authority and more like a tired man who had slept badly. Maya stepped out of her car. She wore a dark blazer today, federal badge clipped where he could see it, but she did not approach like someone making an arrest. Mark looked at the church. "My wife and I were married here." Maya waited. "I baptized my son here, buried my father from that front door." He gave a bitter little smile. "Funny place to realize you've been a coward." "Fear is honest," Maya said. "Silence is a choice." He nodded once, as if the sentence had followed him from the day before, and finally caught up. "I don't have the files with me," he said. "I didn't expect you to, but I know where some of them are. Not the official storage, the copies. Reeves keeps things close when he's scared somebody else might need leverage." "Where?" Mark looked toward the road, then back at her. "Old evidence annex behind the county maintenance yard. Cabinet, with no label. Key is in Reeves's desk, but there's a duplicate in records. Bottom drawer, taped underneath." Maya studied him. "Why tell me now?" He looked older in the morning light. "Because yesterday I watched him turn off the air on an old man and a woman he thought didn't matter. And all I could think was, if he'll do that, where everyone can see it, what have I helped him do in rooms nobody ever got into?" Maya's face softened, but her voice remained professional. "Will you give a statement?" Mark looked down at his coffee. His hands trembled once. "Not yet," he said. "I need time. Time can protect evidence, or it can bury it." "I know." "No, deputy. You know the difference. That's not the same as choosing." He absorbed that without defending himself. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded sheet of paper. Names, dates, people who were there the night of the crash. Some still work there, some transferred, one retired. Maya took it carefully. Mark looked toward the church doors. "I should have done more." "Yes," Maya said. The honesty of that answer hurt him, but it also seemed to steady him. She added, "You can still do what comes next." Mark nodded, but his eyes were wet now, and he turned away before they could become tears. Men like him had been trained to mistake tears for weakness and silence for strength. That morning, behind an old Baptist church, he was beginning to learn he had gotten both wrong. Maya watched his pickup leave the lot, gravel crunching beneath the tires. She unfolded the paper. Names, dates, storage locations. A note at the bottom in uneven handwriting. "I should have done this years ago." Maya placed the paper inside an evidence sleeve and looked up at the church steeple against the pale morning sky. The truth had not fully broken open yet, but one frightened man had finally stopped holding the door shut. Maya did not drive straight back to the sheriff's office after leaving New Hope Baptist. She sat in the church parking lot for another minute, the folded list from Mark Ellison sealed in plastic on the passenger seat, and watched the morning light gather across the gravel. Pine Hollow was waking up slowly around her. A school bus groaned past the road beyond the church. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower coughed, started, then died. The town looked ordinary in the way small towns often did before you knew where the damage was hidden. She called Agent Marcus Reed from the car. "Ellison gave me a location," she said. Reed's voice sharpened. "A real one? Old evidence annex behind the county maintenance yard. He says Reeves keeps unofficial copies there when he wants leverage." There was a pause on the line, long enough for Maya to hear Reed moving, probably reaching for a jacket or a file. "Does he know we're going there now?" "No." "Good. Don't go in alone." "I wasn't planning to." That sounded almost convincing. Maya allowed herself the smallest smile. "Meet me at the maintenance yard in 20. Reed arrived with 2 evidence technicians and a state investigator from the Attorney General's office. No marked federal vehicles, no lights, no performance. Just 3 plain sedans rolling into a gravel lot behind a long metal county building where lawn equipment, traffic cones, and old road signs were stored under a corrugated roof. The old evidence annex stood behind it, half hidden by weeds and a chain-link fence. It was a low, cinder-block structure with one steel door, a rusted gutter, and a faded county property sticker peeling beside the handle. It did not look important. Maya had learned a long time ago that important things were often hidden in places that looked too boring to question. Reed studied the building. "This official? Technically. Probably. Properly tracked? I doubt it." The state investigator, a narrow-faced man named Collins, held up the preservation order. "We have authority to inspect county evidence storage related to the Harlan matter and any unlogged materials referenced by command staff." Reed looked at Maya. "Key? Duplicate is supposed to be in records. Bottom drawer. Taped underneath. One technician had retrieved it before sunrise under supervision." He handed it over now. The key looked too small for what it might open. Maya put on gloves. The lock turned with a dry click. Inside, the annex smelled like mildew, cardboard, dust, and old secrets. Metal shelves lined the walls. Some held labeled evidence boxes. Others held banker's boxes with handwritten dates. A broken office chair sat in one corner. A floor fan leaned against the wall, unplugged and coated gray. There was no camera in the room, no sign in clipboard, no temperature control, and no reason any sensitive material should have been there. Reed looked around and muttered, "Of course." Maya moved slowly down the shelves, reading labels. Traffic overflow, seized property, closed cases, auction pending. Then, behind a stack of outdated patrol manuals, she saw a gray cabinet with no label at all. "Here," she said. Collins photographed the cabinet before anyone touched it. Reed stepped beside Maya as she tried the small key. It did not fit. She looked at the lock, then at the floor. A strip of black electrical tape was stuck under the cabinet's bottom lip. Maya crouched and peeled it free. A second key dropped into her gloved palm. Reed gave a humorless laugh. "That's not suspicious at all." She unlocked the cabinet. The first drawer held envelopes, loose drives, and file folders with names written in block letters. The second held discs and old body cam cartridges. The third held 3 folders separated from the others by a rubber band that had gone brittle with age. Harlan. Carter. Old Mill Road. Maya did not open them immediately. She stepped back. "Photograph everything. Full sequence." The technician began documenting each drawer. The camera clicked in the quiet room. Outside, somewhere beyond the fence, a county truck backed up with a warning beep that sounded too cheerful for the moment. When the folders were logged, Maya opened the one marked Old Mill Road. The first page was a scene diagram, not a copy of the altered report. The original sketch, tire marks, impact point, direction of travel. The line of collision sat clearly in Evan Harlan's lane. Reed leaned closer. "That's not a drift. That's a full cross." Maya turned the page. A responding deputy's handwritten note. Harlan unsteady. Smelled of alcohol. Argumentative. Demanded father be called. Carter conscious. Repeatedly stated Harlan crossed line. Preserve body cam 3B and 4A. Below it was a printed email from Sheriff Reeves to Mark Ellison and a records administrator. Subject: language. The message was only 2 lines. Take out speculative statements. No alcohol reference, unless confirmed by final lab. Carter narrative creates liability. Clean it up before release. Reed's face darkened. There it is. Maya kept reading. Not all of it. Inside the Carter folder were Evelyn's complaints, just like the ones she had given Maya, except these had internal sticky notes attached. Do not intake. Refer to sheriff. Persistent. Politically sensitive. One note was written in thicker black ink. Stop giving her dates. Maya thought of Evelyn walking into that lobby with Leon's photograph held to her chest. She thought of Linda pushing it back with 2 fingers. She thought of every citizen who had gone home wondering whether the law had ignored them because they had done something wrong. She placed the note into an evidence sleeve. Then Reed lifted a small black drive from the drawer. A strip of tape across it read 3B raw. Nobody spoke for a moment. The technician created a forensic copy on site. They did not play the original. They logged it, photographed it, sealed it, and used the copy on a secure laptop in the back of Reed's sedan. Procedure moved slowly, almost painfully slowly, but Maya respected that. Truth mishandled could become truth dismissed. When the video finally opened, the first image shook with rain and red-blue light. The body camera angled toward wet pavement, then lifted to show Old Mill Road at night. A silver sedan sat crushed near the ditch. A black pickup had stopped crooked across the center line. Voices overlapped. Radio traffic. Rain. Someone groaning. Leon Carter's voice came through, strained, but clear. He crossed over. I tried to get away. He crossed over. The camera swung. Evan Harlan stood near a cruiser, one hand braced against the hood, swaying slightly. His shirt was untucked. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused. A deputy's voice asked, "Mr. Harlan, have you had anything to drink tonight?" Evan snapped, "Call my father." The video continued for another 40 seconds before a hand covered the lens. A muffled voice said, "Turn that thing off until the sheriff gets here." The screen went dark. Inside the sedan, no one moved. Maya stared at the frozen black frame, feeling the full weight of what had just surfaced. Not rumor, not suspicion. A man's own voice. A crash scene. A camera they had called corrupted. A truth they had buried and mislabeled and stored behind a maintenance yard like broken equipment. Reed closed the laptop slowly. "We have the original file." Maya looked toward the annex. "We have more than that." Collins nodded. "We have evidence suppression." Reed added, "Report alteration. Possible obstruction. Maybe conspiracy. If Harlan's communications match the timing." Maya's phone buzzed. For a second, she thought it might be Mark. It was not. A message from a blocked number appeared on the screen. "You didn't get this from me. Check internal phone archive, extension 214. Night after crash. Reeves called Harlan before report changed." Attached was a file path inside the sheriff's office server. Maya showed Reed. He read it once, and his expression hardened into something quiet and dangerous. "Daniel Price? Maybe. Think he'll admit it?" "Not yet." Reed handed the phone back. "Then we give him a reason to stop being afraid." Maya looked across the lot toward the county building, where ordinary employees were arriving for ordinary work, unaware that a hidden cabinet behind them had just cracked open the most powerful office in Pine Hollow County. She thought of Mark's note. "I should have done this years ago." Maybe he should have. But years ago was gone. What mattered now was that the first real file had finally come into the light. Maya placed the sealed drive into the evidence box and signed her name on the custody line. "Let's go back," she said. "Sheriff Reeves has been telling this county there was no footage." Reed closed the evidence box. "Then today we find out who helped him lie." The drive back to the sheriff's office felt shorter than it should have. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Reed's sedan with the sealed evidence box at her feet and the message from the blocked number still open on her phone. Extension 214. Night after crash. Reeves called Harlan before report changed. The words were plain, almost clumsy, but fear often wrote in short sentences. Agent Reed kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. If this came from Price, he's taking a bigger risk than he understands. Maya looked out at the passing storefronts. Pine Hollow, moved by in pieces. A barber shop with 3 men sitting outside. A pharmacy sign advertising flu shots. A church van parked beside a thrift store. A faded billboard for Senator Robert Harlan, smiling over the words, family, faith, freedom. He understands enough, she said. That's why he didn't sign his name. Reed made a low sound in his throat. Fear doesn't excuse silence. No, Maya said, but sometimes fear is the first honest thing a witness gives you. When they arrived, the sheriff's office looked different than it had that morning. Federal vehicles were still parked discreetly along the side. A state investigator stood near the front door. Inside, deputies moved carefully now, like people walking through a house after realizing the floorboards were rotten. Linda Crow would not meet Maya's eyes. Frank stayed behind the counter, suddenly busy with paperwork. Mark Ellison was in the records room with an evidence technician, signing inventory sheets with the slow care of a man trying to put his name on the right side of something for the first time in years. Officer Daniel Price was nowhere in sight. Maya went straight to the communications room. It was small, windowless, and colder than the rest of the building, with server racks humming along one wall, and an old desk crowded with monitors, phone equipment, and handwritten extension lists taped to the side of a cabinet. A young federal technician named Alvarez was already seated at the terminal. Extension 214, Maya said. Alvarez nodded. Internal line assigned to the sheriff's private office. Call archive is supposed to auto-purge after 30 days, but there's a temporary cache. Can you access the night after the crash? Already pulling it, Alvarez typed quickly. There are 3 calls between Reeves's office and an outside number marked private. 2 short, 1 longer, 13 minutes. Reed stood behind Maya. Can we identify the outside number? Not from the basic log, but the routing data can be subpoenaed. I can preserve it now. Do that, Maya said. Alvarez clicked through the system, playing the long call from the copy, not the source. The speakers crackled once. Then Sheriff Reeves's voice filled the small room, lower than in the lobby, more controlled, but unmistakable. Robert, I said I'd handle it. A second voice answered, older, polished, used to rooms where people stopped talking when he entered. Handle it faster. My son's name is already moving around town. Your son should have thought of that before he crossed the center line smelling like a distillery. A pause. Maya looked at Reed. Reed did not blink. Senator Harlan's voice sharpened. Careful, Clayton. Reeves laughed softly. I am being careful. That's why I'm calling you from my office, and not putting this in a text. What about the black man? Carter? Yes. He'll get blamed enough to muddy it. Not charged unless we need leverage. His wife can holler all she wants. No body cam, no alcohol result, no problem. There was body cam. Not officially. Another pause. This one felt heavier. Then Harlan said, Donors don't forget loyalty. Reeves replied, Neither do sheriffs when election season comes. Alvarez stopped the recording only after the line clicked dead. For several seconds, the room held nothing but the hum of servers. Reed spoke first. That's conspiracy. Maya's eyes stayed on the monitor. Obstruction, evidence suppression, bribery implication, civil rights angle if they knowingly framed Carter to protect Harlan. Alvarez looked pale. Do you want the other 2 calls? Yes, Maya said. Preserve everything. Make duplicate forensic copies. Full chain of custody. No one touches the source. Reed stepped into the hallway and made 2 calls in quick succession. One to the Attorney General's office and one to the DOJ liaison. Maya stayed in the communications room, listening to the shorter calls. They did not say as much, but they said enough. Timing, pressure, control. The report was altered after the calls. The blood alcohol result disappeared after the calls. The body cam was marked corrupted after the calls. When Maya finally stepped out, Daniel Price was standing at the far end of the hall. He looked like a man who wanted to run but had forgotten how. Maya walked toward him. Officer Price. He swallowed. Ma'am, you sent the message. His eyes moved to the floor. Maya stopped a few feet away, giving him room to tell the truth without feeling cornered. The file path was accurate. Price rubbed one hand over the back of his neck. I didn't know if it would still be there, but you knew it existed. I heard part of it that night. I was covering dispatch overflow. The call hit the archive. Next morning, I checked. Then I saw the report change. His voice cracked slightly. I told myself maybe I misunderstood. Maya said nothing. Price looked up, ashamed. Then Mrs. Carter kept coming in. Mr. Reed kept coming in. People kept coming in. And I kept telling myself I was too new to do anything. Why send it now? His eyes flicked toward the lobby. Because yesterday he turned off the air on you and Mr. Reed, and everybody laughed like that was normal. I realized I wasn't scared, because Reeves was powerful. I was scared because all of us kept helping him be powerful. Maya let that sit. Will you give a statement? Price inhaled slowly. Yes, ma'am, but I want protection. You'll have it if you tell the truth fully. He nodded. Then I'll tell it. Before Maya could answer, raised voices erupted from the lobby. Reed came out of the conference room at the same moment. They moved together toward the front. Sheriff Reeves stood near the entrance with 2 local reporters and a camera crew. Somehow, despite the command restriction, he had found his stage. He wore his hat now, badge polished, shoulders squared, playing sheriff for the lens. This office is being targeted by outsiders with a political agenda, Reeves said. I will not allow federal intimidation to smear good deputies or divide this community, a reporter asked. Sheriff, are you denying that federal agents found irregularities in the Harlan case? Reeves smiled. I'm denying the right of people who don't live here to come in and tell Pine Hollow how to enforce the law. Maya stopped just inside the lobby. Reeves saw her. For one moment, his expression held triumph. He thought cameras made him safer. Then Agent Reed stepped beside her and said quietly, "Let him talk." So Maya did. Reeves faced the reporters again. This is still my county. Maya's phone buzzed in her hand. Alvarez had sent confirmation. Call. Archive preserved. Copies secured. Metadata matched. Maya looked at the message. Then at Reeves. No, she thought. Not anymore. Outside the glass doors, Pine Hollow's evening light spilled across the lobby floor. The same floor where Samuel Reed had waited. Where Evelyn Carter had been turned away. Where Maya had sat for 5.5 hours while a corrupt man mistook patience for powerlessness. Reeves kept talking. The cameras kept rolling. And inside Maya's evidence file, his own voice had already begun answering him. By morning, Sheriff Reeves's words were everywhere in Pine Hollow. They played on the television mounted above the counter at Ruthie's Diner, beneath the framed photograph of the high school football team from 1987. They played on phones held by men waiting for oil changes at Dixon's garage. They played in living rooms where older women folded laundry and shook their heads, not because they were surprised, but because they had lived long enough to recognize a man wrapping himself in the flag when the truth got too close. This is still my county, Reeves said on the screen, his jaw squared, his badge bright, his voice steady for the cameras. Maya watched the clip from a corner booth at Ruthie's with a cup of black coffee cooling beside her hand. Agent Marcus Reed sat across from her, reading through the first draft of the evidence summary. Outside the diner window, Pine Hollow looked peaceful in the early light. A mail truck rolled past. A church bell rang 9 times. 2 elderly men crossed Main Street slowly, one holding the other by the elbow. On the TV, the local anchor said, Sheriff Reeves claims federal officials are conducting what he calls a politically motivated review of his office. Federal representatives have declined to comment on ongoing evidence collection. Reed looked up from the file. He's trying to make this about outsiders. He has to, Maya said. If it stays about evidence, he loses. The waitress, Ruthie herself, came by with a pot of coffee. She was in her late 60s, with silver hair, pink lipstick, and the calm authority of a woman who had been feeding half the county since before some of its deputies were born. You want to warm up, honey? She asked Maya. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Ruthie poured, then glanced at the television. Reeves's face filled the screen again. My daddy used to say, Ruthie murmured. When a man says my county too many times, he's usually forgotten who pays for the courthouse. Reed nearly smiled. Maya did. Ruthie leaned closer, lowering her voice. Folks are talking. Not all of them loud, but they're talking. What are they saying? Maya asked. Ruthie looked toward the other booths before answering. Some say Reeves is being attacked. Some say it's about time somebody opened those back rooms. And some are waiting to see which side is safer before they admit what they already know. That was Pine Hollow now. A town divided not only by race or politics, but by fear. Reeves still had supporters. Men who liked that he sounded tough. Church donors who had taken photographs with Senator Harlan. Deputies' families who worried that if the sheriff fell, paychecks might follow. But there were others too. People who had spent years being told to come back Monday. People who had watched complaints vanish. People who had learned to leave the sheriff's office before anger became an arrestable offense. At 10:30, Maya and Reed returned to the temporary command room. Evidence had begun forming its own architecture across the walls. Timelines, call logs, intake refusals, body cam footage, 2 crash reports, Evelyn Carter's complaints, Samuel Reed's correction paperwork, a still image from Maya's button camera showing Sheriff Reeves smiling under the sign that read, "To serve and protect." Maya stood before the board, arms crossed, reading the timeline from left to right. Reed came beside her. Attorney General wants a public evidentiary hearing in 48 hours. Good. DOJ is sending a civil rights attorney. Post board will attend. County commissioners too. And Harlan. His office says he welcomes transparency. Maya looked at him. Reed shrugged. That's what guilty men call panic when they have staff. Before Maya could answer, Officer Daniel Price entered with a signed preliminary statement. He looked like he had not slept. His uniform was pressed, but his face carried the exhaustion of a man who had spent the night deciding whether truth would cost him everything. I wrote down what I remember, he said. About the call archive, about Mrs. Carter, about the Harlan file being pulled from normal access. Maya took the statement. Did anyone pressure you? After the press conference, Price hesitated. Frank told me I better think about my future. What did you say? I told him I finally was. Reed nodded once, approving more than his expression showed. At noon, Evelyn Carter appeared on the local news. She did not stand on courthouse steps shouting. She sat at her kitchen table, Leon's photograph beside her, the folded flag visible behind her shoulder. Her voice was not dramatic. It was worse than dramatic. It was steady. My husband did not ask to be important, she said into the camera. He asked to be treated honest. We came to that office 3 times. They did not lose our complaint. They refused it. Maya watched from the command room doorway. Evelyn continued. If telling the truth divides this county, then this county was already divided. Some of us were just waiting for somebody to admit it. The clip spread faster than Reeves's statement had. By late afternoon, people began gathering outside the courthouse. Not a mob, not a protest exactly, more like a line of witnesses who had not yet been called. Older black women in church shoes, veterans in caps, a young mother with 2 children, a mechanic with grease still under his fingernails. Samuel Reed came too, wearing a clean white shirt and holding his folder like it was finally more than a burden. Maya saw him through the courthouse window when she arrived with Reed to review the hearing room. He noticed her and lifted his hat. She nodded back. Inside, the hearing room smelled of polished wood and old paper. Rows of benches faced the front. A state seal hung behind the panel table. Microphones had been tested. A screen stood ready for video. Everything looked formal, controlled, lawful. But Maya knew what would enter that room in 2 days was not just evidence. It was years of swallowed anger, delayed paperwork, lost jobs, ruined names, and people who had been made to feel small in a building their taxes paid for. Reed set a folder on the front table. You know Reeves. Will attack the undercover entry. He should, Maya said. It helps us. How? I came in pretending to be powerless. He treated me exactly the way he treats powerless people. Reed studied her for a moment. That line belongs in the hearing. It belongs to the truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. You're making this town dangerous. Leave before someone gets hurt. Maya stared at it for a second, then handed the phone to Reed. His face hardened. We'll trace it. Maya looked out at the courthouse steps, where Evelyn Carter had just arrived. Samuel Reed moved aside to let her pass. The young mother from the lobby stood near the rail, holding one child's hand and bouncing the other on her hip. No, Maya said quietly. We'll preserve it. Reed followed her gaze. Outside, Pine Hollow was taking sides. But for the first time, the people who had been forced to wait were no longer waiting alone. The hearing room was already full by the time Maya stepped through the side entrance with Agent Reed. It was not loud, but the silence had pressure in it. People filled every bench from the front rail to the back wall, sitting shoulder to shoulder beneath the high windows of the Pine Hollow County Courthouse. Older women held purses in their laps with both hands. Veterans wore caps from Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq. Deputies' wives sat stiffly beside men who would not meet anyone's eyes. Reporters stood along the side wall with notebooks ready and cameras balanced on tripods. Sheriff Clayton Reeves sat at the right-hand table with his attorney, a narrow man in a navy suit who kept whispering into his ear. Reeves wore his dress uniform. His badge had been polished until it caught the light every time he moved. He looked, from a distance, exactly like what many people in that room had been taught to respect. But Maya had seen him in the lobby. She had heard him behind closed doors, and now the room would too. A 3-member review panel sat at the front. A representative from the State Attorney General's office, a member of the Georgia Post Board, and a DOJ civil rights attorney named Dana Whitfield, a woman in her 50s with silver at her temples and eyes that missed nothing. County commissioners sat behind them, not in charge today, but present enough to feel the weight of what their county had allowed. Maya placed her evidence binder on the table. Beside it sat a sealed drive, printed still images, intake logs, complaint forms, and a small, clear evidence pouch containing the dark button from her brown jacket. Reeves looked at it once, then looked away. That told her enough. Dana Whitfield opened the hearing with a calm voice. This special evidentiary review concerns allegations of discriminatory denial of service, evidence suppression, obstruction of justice, and misconduct within the Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office. Investigator Maya William will present the preliminary record. Maya stood. For a moment, she looked past the panel and toward the benches. Samuel Reed sat 3 rows back with his folder on his knees. Evelyn Carter sat near the aisle, wearing the same quiet dignity she had carried into the sheriff's office. Officer Daniel Price sat farther back, pale but present. Mark Ellison stood near the wall, hands folded in front of him, looking like a man waiting for judgment from himself before anyone else could give it. Maya turned to the panel. At 8:42 a.m., I entered the Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office under an authorized integrity scenario. I identified myself as a citizen attempting to report a stolen passport. My purpose was to observe intake procedures, citizen treatment, and complaint handling under ordinary conditions. Reeves's attorney stood. Madam Chair, we object to the characterization of ordinary conditions. Investigator William entered under false pretenses. Dana Whitfield looked at him. Your objection is noted. Sit down. The attorney sat. Maya continued. I wore a recording device. The device was visible as a button on my jacket. It captured my interactions and the conduct of staff over approximately 5.5 hours. She nodded to the technician. The screen at the front came alive. The first image showed Linda Crow at the reception counter, her face sharp with irritation. The audio crackled once. Then her voice filled the hearing room. Ma'am, if your passport got stolen, fill out the form and sit down. The sheriff doesn't stop county business for people like you. A murmur passed through the room. Not surprise from everyone. For some, recognition. Maya did not look at Linda, who sat behind the county council table with her hands twisted together. The video continued. Maya's own voice came through, calm and respectful, explaining that a stolen passport could involve identity fraud or federal documentation. Linda answered with the same dismissive line everyone heard clearly. Honey, this is Pine Hollow County, not Washington, D.C. The older deputy's laugh followed. Maya paused the video. My report was never entered into the intake system. It was placed aside, then later moved to a pending tray without a report number. She clicked to the next image. The tray marked pending. These are reports and complaints delayed without official processing. Several included allegations of wrongful arrest, excessive force, and matters connected to the Harlan case. Reeves leaned toward his attorney and whispered. His face was controlled, but his hand had tightened around a pen. Maya played the next clip. Samuel Reed stood at the counter, folder in hand. His voice trembled as he explained that his son had been detained on a warrant meant for another man. Linda's answer came flat and final. If there was something to process, it would be processed. In the gallery, Samuel lowered his head. The woman beside him put a hand on his arm. Maya said, Mr. Reed had documentation showing a misidentification. His request had been delayed multiple times. She moved to another clip. The woman with 2 children. The wrong form. The little girl asking to go home. Then the white man in the gray suit entering with no paperwork and being taken through the secured door within seconds. The room shifted. Not with noise, but with posture. People leaned forward. A few looked at Reeves. Others looked down, perhaps remembering their own hour in that same lobby. Then the screen showed the red-faced man in work boots placing a white envelope under a stack of papers. Linda's hand covered it. 10 minutes later, the stamped paperwork appeared. Maya let the clip play without narration. When it ended, she said, "The investigation has not yet determined the contents of that envelope. What the video establishes is preferential handling after an unlogged exchange, while other citizens remained unprocessed." Reeves's attorney stood again. Speculation. Maya looked at him. The conclusion is pending. The preferential handling is visible. Dana Whitfield nodded. Proceed. Maya clicked again. This time the audio came from the hallway. Reeves's voice, low and irritated. "Don't mention the Harlan boy out there. I told you that file was closed." The room went still. Another man's voice asked about the Carter family and body cam footage. Reeves snapped. "Then let them keep asking. There is no footage." Then came the question about Evan Harlan's blood alcohol results. Reeves's recorded voice answered slowly. "You ought to learn how to forget things that don't exist in the official file anymore." Evelyn Carter closed her eyes. Maya felt the weight of that moment, but she kept her voice steady. This conversation occurred while citizens, including relatives of complainants, were seated in the public lobby. She advanced to the next clip. Reeves standing in the hallway, cigar in hand, looking toward Maya and Samuel Reed. "Why is the lobby still cool enough for people to get comfortable?" The older deputy crossed to the thermostat. Reeves's voice followed. "If folks plan to camp out all day, they don't need hotel conditions." The click of the air conditioner shutting off sounded small on the recording. In the hearing room, it landed like a door being locked. Maya paused the video on an image of Reeves, smiling beneath the sign that read, "To serve and protect." "For 5.5 hours, I did not interrupt them," Maya said. "I let this office show me exactly how it treats people when it thinks no one important is watching." Reeves's face reddened. "That is taken out of context." Dana Whitfield turned to him. "Sheriff Reeves, you will have an opportunity to respond through counsel." Maya looked directly at him then. Not with anger, with clarity. "No, Sheriff," she said. "I came in pretending to be powerless, and you treated me exactly the way you treat powerless people." No one spoke. Not the reporters, not the deputies, not the county commissioners. Even Reeves's attorney looked down at his notes, as if searching for a sentence that could survive what the room had just heard. Maya placed the small button camera pouch on the table. "This device did not create the conduct," she said. "It preserved it." She turned toward the panel. "The lobby evidence establishes a pattern of discriminatory delay, selective intake, retaliation through discomfort, and verbal references to suppressed materials in the Harlan Carter matter. The next portion of the record concerns the file Sheriff Reeves said was closed. At the mention of that file, Reeves finally looked at the evidence table, for the first time since the hearing began. His polished badge no longer seemed to shine. It looked heavy, like something pinned to a man who had forgotten what it was supposed to mean. Maya turned from the frozen image of Sheriff Reeves beneath the lobby sign and faced the evidence table. The hearing room remained silent, but it was not the same silence as before. Earlier, the room had been waiting to hear whether the accusations were true. Now it was waiting to learn how deep they went. She lifted a folder marked Old Mill Road and placed it beneath the document camera. On the screen, the first page appeared: date, time, location, responding officers, crash diagram. This is the original incident report from the crash involving Evan Harlan and Leon Carter, Maya said. It was recovered from an unlogged evidence cabinet behind the county maintenance yard. Reeves's attorney stood halfway. We object to the phrase, recovered. That implies improper concealment. Dana Whitfield looked over her glasses. Counsel, the document was found in an unlogged cabinet outside the normal evidence chain. The word may stand for now. Sit down. The attorney sat. Maya placed a second report beside the first. This is the official version released to the Carter family and entered into the sheriff's office records system. The 2 pages appeared side by side on the screen. At first, they looked similar. Same case number, same date, same stretch of Old Mill Road. But then Maya began highlighting the differences. In the original report, Evan Harlan's truck is shown crossing the center line. In the official report, the diagram is redrawn to suggest Leon Carter's sedan drifted first. In the original report, the responding deputy notes a strong odor of alcohol from Evan Harlan. In the official report, that sentence is removed. In the original, the field sobriety test is marked attempted and incomplete. In the official, there is no reference to alcohol at all. A murmur moved through the benches. Evelyn Carter sat very still, both hands wrapped around her purse. Her eyes did not leave the screen. Maya continued. The original report also contains this instruction: preserve body camera footage 3B and 4A. In the official report, the footage is marked corrupted. Sheriff Reeves leaned toward his lawyer, whispering quickly now. His face had lost some of the red anger from moments before. What remained was calculation. Maya nodded to the technician. The screen changed to rain, flashing lights, wet pavement, and the shaky view of a deputy's body camera. The hearing room seemed to lean toward it. The audio crackled. A voice groaned in pain. Then Leon Carter's voice came through, strained but clear. He crossed over. I tried to get away. He crossed over. Evelyn Carter closed one hand over her mouth. The camera swung toward a black pickup across the center line. Evan Harlan stood beside a cruiser, bracing himself against the hood. His shirt was untucked. His eyes were unfocused. His words slurred slightly when a deputy asked, "Mr. Harlan, have you had anything to drink tonight?" Evan snapped, "Call my father." A few seconds later, a hand covered the lens. A muffled voice said, "Turn that thing off until the sheriff gets here." The screen went black. No one in the hearing room moved. Maya let the darkness stay on the screen for 3 full seconds before she spoke. This is the footage the Carter family was told did not exist. Evelyn lowered her hand. Her face had changed, but not into triumph. It was grief, being forced to relive itself in public because private truth had been denied too long. Maya placed another document beneath the camera. This is an email from Sheriff Reeves to Deputy Mark Ellison and records staff. Subject line: language. The email appeared on the screen. Take out speculative statements. No alcohol reference, unless confirmed by final lab. Carter narrative creates liability. Clean it up before release. Maya read it aloud exactly once. Reeves's attorney stood. That email does not instruct anyone to falsify evidence. Maya looked at him. Then Deputy Ellison can explain how it was understood. Mark Ellison rose from the side wall. He looked older than he had in the lobby. The walk to the witness table seemed to take years from him. He sat, placed both hands flat on the table, and waited to be sworn. Maya asked, "Deputy Ellison, were you present at the scene of the Old Mill Road crash?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did the original report accurately reflect what you observed?" Mark swallowed. "It did." "Did Sheriff Reeves instruct you to change it?" "He told me to clean up the language." "What did that mean?" Mark looked toward Reeves, then away. "It meant take out anything that made Evan Harlan look responsible." A wave of sound passed through the room. Dana Whitfield tapped her pen once, and the room settled. Maya's voice stayed calm. "Why did you comply?" Mark's face tightened. Because I was afraid. I was 18 months from retirement. Reeves had power over my schedule, my pension recommendations, my reputation. And I told myself the truth would come out some other way. Did it? No, ma'am. His voice broke slightly. Not until she came. He looked toward Evelyn Carter. Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry. I should have said it when your husband was still in that hospital bed. Evelyn did not answer. She only looked at him. And in that look was more judgment than any shouting could have carried. Linda Crow was called next. She walked to the table with stiff legs, as if each step had to pass through shame. Maya asked, Miss Crow, were you instructed not to process complaints related to the Harlan matter? Linda's lips trembled. Yes. By whom? She closed her eyes. Sheriff Reeves. What were you told? To mark them for sheriff review, or not enter them at all if they came from the Carter family. She wiped at one eye quickly. He said Mrs. Carter was trying to stir up trouble. Evelyn gave a quiet sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a breath. Officer Daniel Price followed. His testimony was short, but it cut cleanly. He confirmed the body camera file had existed in temporary archive the morning after the crash. He confirmed that internal phone calls were preserved briefly before purge. He confirmed the extension used from Reeves's private office. Then Maya turned to the technician. Play the preserved call. Sheriff Reeves's recorded voice filled the courtroom. Robert, I said I'd handle it. Senator Harlan's voice followed, polished and tense. Handle it faster. My son's name is already moving around town. Reeves's laugh came through next. Your son should have thought of that before he crossed the center line smelling like a distillery. Someone gasped. The call continued. What about the black man? Carter? He'll get blamed enough to muddy it. Not charged unless we need leverage. His wife can holler all she wants. No body cam, no alcohol result, no problem. Then Harlan's voice, lower now. Donors don't forget loyalty, Reeves answered. Neither do sheriffs when election season comes. The recording ended. The silence afterward was unlike any silence Maya had ever heard. It was not confusion. It was recognition. The room had finally seen the shape of the thing that had been standing in front of them for years. Sheriff Reeves stood abruptly. This is a political ambush. Dana Whitfield's voice was sharp. Sit down. Sheriff Reeves. He stayed standing. I am the elected sheriff of this county. The post board representative leaned into his microphone. And at this moment, you are a subject of this review. Sit down. For one stunned second, Reeves seemed unable to understand the words. He looked around the room as if searching for the old Pine Hollow, the one where people lowered their eyes when he spoke. But Samuel Reed looked back at him. Evelyn Carter looked back at him. Mark Ellison looked back at him. Even Officer Price did. No one moved to help him. Slowly, Reeves sat. Maya looked at him across the hearing room. The man who had made citizens wait in heat, fear, and humiliation was now seated under the weight of his own voice. She turned back to the panel. The file Sheriff Reeves said would never see daylight, Maya said, is now part of the public record. The hearing did not end with applause. Real justice rarely arrived to the sound people expected. It came instead through microphones, legal language, signed orders, and the stunned silence of a room that had finally heard enough truth to make denial impossible. Dana Whitfield looked down at the documents before her, then at the other members of the panel. The post board representative whispered something to the state attorney general's counsel. A commissioner near the back wiped his face with a handkerchief, though the room was cool. Sheriff Reeves sat rigid at his table, his polished badge catching light with every small movement of his chest. For the first time since Maya had met him, he looked like a man listening for footsteps behind him. Whitfield leaned toward her microphone. Based on the preliminary record presented today, including preserved video, original reports, altered reports, citizen complaints, witness testimony, and internal phone recordings, this panel finds sufficient cause to recommend immediate suspension of Sheriff Clayton Reeves's law enforcement certification, pending full investigation. A sound moved through the room, low and human. Reeves's attorney stood. Madam Chair, we object to any immediate action before formal adjudication. The post representative answered before Whitfield could. Counsel, Your client remains entitled to process. He is not entitled to continue exercising law enforcement authority, while evidence indicates he used that authority to suppress records, intimidate witnesses, and obstruct a criminal investigation. Reeves gripped the edge of the table. You can't do this. Maya watched him. She remembered his voice in the lobby. In this building, justice moves when I say it moves. Now justice was moving without asking him. Whitfield continued. The Department of Justice will open a civil rights investigation. The State Attorney General's office will review potential charges related to evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, bribery, and conspiracy. The Harlan Carter crash file will be reopened immediately. All complaints marked pending, sheriff review, hold, or do not process, will be audited under outside supervision. Evelyn Carter closed her eyes and bowed her head. Not in defeat this time. In release. Samuel Reed sat with both hands around his folder. His lips moved once, silently. Maybe a prayer. Maybe his son's name. Whitfield looked toward Reeves. Sheriff Reeves, pending further action by the appropriate county and state authorities, you are restricted from command access to the Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office, its personnel, and its records. Reeves stood too fast, his chair scraping against the floor. This is my county. No one answered him. That was the answer. 2 state officers approached. Not with handcuffs. Not yet. But with the unmistakable posture of men there to escort authority away from itself. Reeves looked around the room, searching for the old reflexes. Someone to rise. Someone to object. Someone to be afraid on his behalf. Senator Harlan was not there. His attorney was staring down at a legal pad. Frank had disappeared before the testimony ended. Linda Crow sat in the back, crying quietly into a tissue. Mark Ellison stood by the wall, pale but upright. Officer Price did not look away. Reeves turned his eyes to Maya. You think this is over? He said. Maya met his stare. No. For the people you ignored, it's finally beginning. He had no reply that could survive the room. The officers led him out through the same side aisle he had once used to avoid the citizens in his own lobby. This time, the public watched him pass. No one opened a private door. No one laughed. No one called him, sir. Outside, cameras waited. Within 48 hours, the headlines had changed. Sheriff Clayton Reeves was no longer speaking about outsiders and political agendas. His lawyer was issuing statements about cooperation and due process. Senator Robert Harlan announced he was temporarily stepping back from public appearances to focus on his family. By the end of the week, the Attorney General's office confirmed a criminal review into the handling of the Harlan Carter crash. The DOJ opened a civil rights inquiry into the Pine Hollow County Sheriff's Office. The Post Board suspended Reeves's certification. County commissioners appointed an interim sheriff from outside the department. The building on Main Street did not transform overnight. Buildings never did. The same red bricks stood under the same Georgia sun. The same flagpole cast a shadow over the front walk. But something inside had shifted. The locked cabinet was empty now. The pending tray was gone. A temporary complaint desk sat in the lobby, staffed by people who logged names, dates, and report numbers before telling anyone to sit down. Samuel Reed returned on a Tuesday morning. This time, when he handed over the documents about his son, a state reviewer entered them into the system while he watched. Terrence Reed's mistaken warrant record was flagged for correction that same day. It did not give him his job back immediately. It did not erase the humiliation of 31 hours in a cell, but it put the truth where a lie had been sitting. Evelyn Carter came in 2 days later with Leon beside her. He walked with a cane, slowly, stubbornly, wearing his veteran's cap again. When the interim sheriff met them in the lobby and apologized on behalf of the office, Leon listened without smiling. Then he said, "Don't apologize to get through the morning. Fix it so my grandson doesn't have to stand here one day holding my picture." A month passed, then another. Maya returned to Pine Hollow near the beginning of fall. She did not come with cameras. She did not come for a ceremony, though the county had wanted one. She came because Evelyn had called and said, "You should see the lobby now." The air conditioning worked. That was the first thing Maya noticed, and for a moment it almost made her smile. The hard plastic chairs had been replaced by sturdier ones with armrests for older visitors. A water cooler stood near the wall. A sign at the complaint desk read, "No complaint shall be refused. No citizen shall be ignored." Beneath it, in smaller letters, was a phone number for the State Oversight Office. The old "To Serve and Protect" sign still hung above the photographs, but the photographs had changed. Reeves's portrait was gone. In its place was a framed copy of the new public intake policy, signed by the interim sheriff, the county commission, and the state monitor. Near the corner stood one old plastic chair, the same kind Maya had sat in for 5.5 hours. A small brass plaque had been placed beside it. This chair remains as a reminder that public service begins when every citizen is seen. Maya stood before it longer than she meant to. Evelyn Carter approached from the complaint desk. Leon sat nearby, talking quietly with Samuel Reed. The two men had become friends in that way older men sometimes did. Through shared injustice and church coffee. "You made them listen," Evelyn said. Maya turned. "No, ma'am. You kept telling the truth until someone finally had to." Evelyn looked at the chair. "Still, you sat there. I had backup. Not in that chair. You didn't." Maya did not answer right away. She thought of the heat, Linda's dismissive voice, Reeves's cigar, Samuel's trembling hands, Mark's bottle of water, the tiny camera at her collar, and the moment a corrupt man looked at her and saw nothing worth fearing. "Sometimes," Maya said, "justice starts by letting people show you who they are." Evelyn nodded slowly. "And sometimes it starts because one person refuses to leave." Maya looked across the lobby. Officer Daniel Price, now assigned to the reform team, was helping an elderly woman fill out a complaint form. He spoke gently, leaning down so she did not have to raise her voice. At the counter, a young clerk stamped Samuel Reed's paperwork and handed him a copy with a report number printed clearly at the top. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Not satisfaction, not victory, something quieter. Outside, the Georgia sky was wide and bright. She stepped through the front doors and paused on the walkway. Her gray sedan waited near the curb. In her purse, her badge rested beside a new button camera, silent for now. Behind her, the sheriff's office doors opened again as another citizen walked in. This time, someone greeted them. Maya got into her car, placed her purse on the passenger seat, and looked once more at the building. The story was not over. Investigations would continue. Trials might come. Appeals would follow. Some people would deny what the evidence had already proved. Others would pretend they had always known. But the file had seen daylight. Leon Carter's name was no longer buried under a lie. Samuel Reed's son was no longer just another folder in a tray. And Sheriff Clayton Reeves, who once believed power meant making people wait, had learned the oldest truth in the law he had betrayed. Justice has a memory. When it finally stands up, even the most powerful men must sit down and answer. The lesson of this story is that real power is not found in a badge, a title, or a locked office. Real power belongs to truth, patience, and the courage to stand up for people who have been ignored for too long. Maya's silence was not weakness. It was discipline. She showed that injustice often reveals itself when it believes no one important is watching. And in the end, the story reminds us that every citizen deserves dignity, every complaint deserves to be heard, and no corrupt man is above the law. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.